Okay. Let's hope that this works. Okay. Connections there. Air. Does it work? Yes. Hello, my friends. How are you doing? Sorry. Today everything is a little bit hectic because I try to figure out how to set everything up for you. Hi, Eric from Vienna. How are you doing? Thanks for joining. Hi, Oliver from Germany. How are you doing? And of course, we have a star guest today, which is still in the background. They still can't see you, Alex, from the Photographic Eye. I hope some more people are joining for that because we're going to have a really cool conversation. Also, I just remember I should open up the conversation file that I prepared, which is somewhere in the background right now. So let's see. Oh my God, it's so messy everything right now. 1 second. Is this the file I prepared? Yes, there we go. Perfect. Good. Okay, now I need this window again. No, where is it gone? Oh God. Sorry, this is... How do I get the zoom window back? Can I? No. Oh, there we go. That should be good. Okay, cool. Good. Let me quickly see how many people we have. 14 right now. Well, I hope it's getting more. Hi, everybody. Let me restore the chat over here. Hi, Wolfgang from Sachsen-Anhalt. Hi, Chapwin from Northern Virginia. Oliver from Germany. Hi, how are you doing? Thanks for joining. So let me switch over to the second screen and unmute Alex. Wait, how do I do that? Unmute. Okay, that's good. And then, yeah. Almost. There we go. There you are. Guten Abend, yeah. Oh, wait, they can't hear you. They can't hear you. Sorry. Oh. Okay, you have to...
Okay, well, we'll do that again then. Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. It's so lovely. Olivio, thank you for having me here. I say happy everything. Hello, everybody from wherever you are. I think you said North Virginia and some all sorts of places. Anyway, lovely to meet you all. And Olivia, thank you for having me.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's a huge pleasure. I'm a huge fan of your channel, where you talk about photo theory and photographic concepts, artistic concepts behind photography, right? Or do you want to explain it? Probably you have a better pitch line for that.
Yeah, basically, it's my channel is all about so Photographic Eye. It is about the why we photograph rather than the how we photograph. I think that's probably the easiest way to say it. It's not about the gear, it's about the ideas.
Right. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I'm still fixing the screen.
It's okay. I know
it is so incredibly messy today. Yeah, but every of your videos is really a gold mine of understanding photographic concepts and photographic history and the philosophy behind taking these shots. Because I think often it's kind of hard to understand what is photography about and how is like a snapshot that everybody's taking different from a famous photo that might also be a snapshot, but like, it's just like changing the world basically, you know? So, and your channel explains that really, really well.
Oh, well, thank you, Olivia. It's lovely that, that obviously, I as you well know, as a creator, often we sit and we talk to just a lens. But it's nice to know that, that obviously what we talk about, it shapes the way that people across the world see photography and how they think about photography. And that's a lovely, lovely, wonderful thing.
Absolutely, yeah. So, okay, 1 second. I want to look at the chat real quick just to see, is the sound okay? I hope it is. We don't have any kind of back loop or something from my voice, because I'm using headphones today, so we don't have any kind of sound like that. And I think today we're going to talk about how is photography changing over time. We talked a little bit about yesterday, and it's kind of an endless pit of interesting concepts there. So many things are changing, from camera types to where the photography is ending up, stuff like that. So that's really interesting. Also all these kind of tools that we had, or that we are getting right now. So yeah, okay, let's get started on that one.
Yeah.
That kind of topic.
Yeah, obviously, it was just you and I yesterday, but yeah, I think
Right.
to give your viewers a bit of follow up. We talked about a lot of things and stuff like that, and one of the concepts that came up is that both of us are of a certain age, and we have had digital and we've had film
Right.
background. That's what kind of we say. And it's fantastic that we are now living in an age where things are changing, the technology is changing, it's evolving. The way that we consider the still image,
Right.
it has completely changed. If I think back when I first picked up camera, it was mired in a way that hadn't really changed in terms of its viewpoint for 40 or 50 years, certainly since, like, say, 1960s. My Canon A1 was full of pictures in the manual of how to use it, of what looked like a very we talked about this briefly, a very German looking person with like a leather jacket kind of thing, and the big moustaches, and what, they're talking about lenses and what have you. And of course, that was the world that my generation was introduced to. But now we have the guys who have grown up with digital. Digital as a landscape. And we could talk about this certainly later on, about how that changes the way that you certainly think about the digital image. And I would love to see what your audience has to say about how they feel about digital.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you have any questions or you want to join into the conversation, put it in the chat, and I will try to follow up on that and read that. So you can absolutely join in. Yeah, in the meantime, we're going to talk together. So yeah, you had recently a really wonderful video about how photography used to be a privilege for just like a certain group of artists, and now it's opening up to everybody. And they were kind of like in the beginning kind of offended that normal people also have a camera now, take photographs, which is really interesting. And that was not just only true in the past, but also recently that was a topic where, especially I think in Austria, maybe also in Germany, they opened up the business of photography, that you can be a photographer professionally, ask for money. You can do that without having a degree in photography, because before you need to have, it was like a like when you are a plumber or electrician or something, you need to have a certificate that says you can do that.
Oh, really? I had no idea, because certainly in the UK and South Africa, those are my two areas of experience. You do not need a license to be a professional photographer.
Right. Yes.
Right. You can just say, "Hi, I want to take pictures." You don't need to have a degree. You don't need to have some sort of qualification.
Right.
And that's a very interesting thing, because there's been often talk, America's a different story. I think we'll push America to
Yes.
one side and say because there's business licenses and that. So we'll put sorry America, we're going to put you to one side for a moment.
Yeah.
But certainly in South Africa or the UK where these things are not a requirement. It's very interesting that you say that in Germany and Austria, and I'd imagine probably a couple of other sort of Central European countries, that you're required to have a license. You're required to have studied something, to have some sort of
Yeah. Because
qualification.
I mean, from their point of view, it was that you have to learn how to do it because of the quality, and they want to guarantee that the customer gets a good product and stuff like that. Yeah. Kind of you can understand, yeah, maybe, but on the other side, photography is more an art form, that it is a craft in like being an electrician or stuff like that is less about interpretation of what you're doing and more about following regulations of how to lay the line, stuff like that.
I'm 100%.
So
yeah.
that was very strange. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you that obviously photography and other art forms are more open to interpretation. And this has never been more, I think, brought into focus. But then we have recently moved house. And we live in a very old house that's had lots of wiring put into it and plumbing and put into it over the years. And there's a phrase in English called higgledy-piggledy, which means just like it's just happened. In bits and bobs over time. So we were trying to, in the downstairs toilet, we were trying to put in we take out the fluorescent tube and put in a light.
Right.
And my dad my father is a trained licensed electrician. Right. He has been doing this for 60 years. Right. So he has all the, he knows what's going on. So we were doing all this and he couldn't understand why when we took the fluorescent tube off the roof and I put in the bits because I thought, well, I can certainly do that. It's easy enough. And then he came and I said, look, some of the wiring doesn't look what I'm used to. The colors are not right. The earth.
Right. Okay. I see.
Yeah. So he came along and we did all this stuff like that. And he went, I don't understand it. We wired it all up and says, well, it doesn't work. And we have the multimeters and stuff like that. And he goes, it's just something's wrong. And turns out the whole thing was live the entire time that I was like playing with it. Right. Because very boring stuff. But the point is that he, as an electrician, he needs to be trained. He needs to be, he needs to be of a certain skill because people can die. He said, I cannot believe that you were messing with all those wires.
Right.
And they're actually live the whole time. And and God, how you didn't shock yourself is it is bizarre. If they said they were completely wrong, they would just wired like a lunatic would wire them. They would just lie the whole time, even though the switch was actually off. So yes, I think it's a long way of saying that there are certain jobs that I
require
believe
that kind of
having some sort of
background.
But with photography and other art forms, I don't think it's necessary per se, because how will you as a photographer, if you're a professional is how you behave with the client, how you interact with them, how you deliver the script. I have met many people who have been to university, study photography, who behave in a very amateur kind of a bad way, let's say, with photographers. And I've met many people who have never studied photography, who behave in a very professional sort of way. It seems like an odd thing, but it's something that is worth considering. I think that's
absolutely, yeah. And it's like it's still, even with all the technical stuff that we have that help us taking pictures, the ability to take a picture and to see a picture that you can take is not in everybody's blood. And it's kind of, maybe you can learn it. Some people probably don't want to learn it or don't have a connection to that kind of thing, you know? So, and that is a very important part about that. Like, there is a lot of people who are technically good photographers. This is also the interesting thing that you find that you probably find it also in other areas like music and stuff like that. You have studio musicians. They are perfect at playing guitar and perfect at playing trumpet, but they are not musicians in the way that they can write a piece that moves you. They are just there to play the notes for others because they play it really well, but they have no inner like artistic expression. I think in photography you also often find that you have people who are really skilled in understanding every aspect of photography, but just not what a good picture is. And then, yeah, that's a pity. You can use them in the sense of helping you technically how to reach that goal, but they just don't know what the goal is. They don't see the goal. That's maybe a point.
I know exactly what you mean.
Right. And there, this kind of master's degree or whatever is not really helping. And this was also a huge argument in Austria, where they said, hey, there's so many people who have learned how to do it, but they are still bad photographers. And you pay a huge amount of money to take photos of your babies, and they look like crap because they have no sensitivity and feeling and artistic expression for how to photograph that subject. They just take a technically perfect picture, but it's without expression. And this is the main thing about photography, is the expression.
But that's picture, right? that is one of the main the huge things that
right.
that we cannot be taught. Right? I say we cannot. It's very hard to teach. It is easy to teach you the nuts and bolts about photography. We can sit with all of everybody who's watching this video right now, and we can spend a weekend, if we were one-on-one, you know, like in a group, and pretty much iron out every single technical issue with the photography. It's not particularly hard. It's and you know it's because it's a defined thing, unlike painting or penmanship or you know graphic design. It's a black and white issue. It's very much it's an easy thing to do. But what is the major issue is teaching people empathy. And I don't know if that word translates too much into German. I'm trying to think about what it would. I mean, you know, it's how you kind of connect with the person.
Right.
It's how the person you're photographing is connected, and that's one of the things that certainly within you know, I work as a family portrait photographer, and I have seen many photographs where I look at it and go, that person, the person being photographed, has a glazed look in their expression. Has just they just kind of, you know, have that expression, you know, and you think so the image itself is technically correct, right? But the photographer's interaction with the person is lacking. And that's kind of, if you want to, you know, I don't know what your audience is kind of more predominantly drawn towards, but if you're doing portrait photography, excuse me, the biggest you know, sort of skill that you need, the skill that you should really work on is the interaction between the person. You know, it's between you and the person you're photographing. It's like if you had said to me, you know, say Alex, I want you to take a picture of me, and I say, fine, Olivia, I am going to spend half an hour talking to you.
Right.
Yeah, because I want to know how, you know, obviously in a commercial setup you need to condense it a little bit, but I want to know what it is about you, and what is it that you are wanting to see in this photograph, things of that nature.
Right.
That connection between people or the thing that you're photographing is so important. All of your viewers are capable of doing the technical bit easily.
Right, right.
Let's connect to people. Let's connect to the thing we're photographing. Let's make it feel part of us and stuff like that. I don't know if
To be
you're
honest, I think like I couldn't even do this kind of photography because for me it's like I always test out the when I shoot with a model to see if they resonate with me. So we have a chemistry, and then also if they resonate with my camera, because that's a difference. And I couldn't photograph a person that I don't feel, you know, and that is just not right for my camera, which is kind of strange. Other people could do that. It's just not what I can do, because I shoot for things that I have in my mind that I want to photograph, and that's a different kind of more artistic approach, in the sense of you have a concept, like a painter, for example, says I want to make this and that. And you search people for that. You do like a casting for that. And then the one thing is like, can you interact with the person? Like, do you understand? Can you talk with each other on what you mean? Can they follow your instructions? Because some people understand what you mean. Kind of, you have a good connection to them. And other people, it doesn't mean they are worse at what they are doing, but they just don't, like, there isn't that kind of flow. They don't really get what you want from them. And then also, does it look good in the camera when you photograph them? Like what they are doing, you know?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it just doesn't. And that's also like, then it doesn't work. And it doesn't have to do anything with how good does the person look or how good can the person pose or stuff like that. Sometimes it's just not there. I feel like it's good, but it's not alive. You know what I mean? It's not a really good work. You know, so that's really interesting. By the way, I want to really quickly go on a comment here from the chat. So Russell says, some members of my photo club look down on mirrorless cameras, and in some cases, my mirrorless camera costs more than their SLR. Photo snobbery, question mark. And that's, of course, like this kind of evolving technology.
It is. Yep. Is it okay if I jump in?
Absolutely, jump in, please.
So Russell, hey, Russell, you're right. Camera clubs are it's a weird thing. There are little cliques in camera clubs where people sort of go, you must do this and you must do that. Okay. In terms of photo snobbery, like DSLRs over mirrorless and things like that, I think that's a new conversation. That is a conversation that's fairly new in photographic circles. And I hate to say like when I was a student and stuff like that, but you know, so when I was a student, you know, back when I learned photography, nobody ever asked you about the camera that you used. You took a photograph and they discussed the image itself. They discussed what it was. Whether it was shot on medium format, large format, 35 nobody actually really cared. You know, there wasn't a thing. It was what you ended up with. The discussion about mirrorless versus DSLR versus film versus digital, all these sort of things, that is where people who want to quantify their art hide. Because because it's easy to say, well, you didn't shoot, you know, like I shoot my videos on a 250D, which is a Canon thing, which is like a cheap camera, but it does better video than my 5DS, which does better stills. The camera is just a tool. The camera is a tool that you use to capture what is up here. The great thing about photography is that it is up here. The people who we consider to be the greats of photography, as a very broad term, used cameras that are, by modern definitions, so bad. You know, they don't have autofocus, they don't have all the ISO, they have film, you know, it's also so really, so Russell and everybody else who's listening, if somebody tells you that the camera that you used is somehow inferior, just don't care, right? It makes no difference at all. The greatest pictures that we consider to be the greatest pictures that have so much impact on humanity, and that have resonation throughout the years, the decades, the centuries, were photographed on a camera that is worse than the thing that I have in my hand right now.
Right.
So absolutely do not.
Yeah.
Do not worry about it, man. Shoot your photography however you want to see it, right? The medium that you use makes no difference.
Right.
I said, I hope that helps, and I hope it upsets all those people in your camera club who are like, oh, but you can't with the DSLR.
Yeah. I think it's also like this. Often this comes from this kind of more old school point of view of, we are from the actual time that did it right, or stuff like that. We are the ones who own how to do it, and then you have all these fancy tools that help you. So now you're not as good anymore because you need these kind of crutches to take good pictures. But then again, you already have a digital camera as a DSLR that is not anymore analog, and you're not having any wet plates or any kind of other stuff, so you are already using enough crutches. And I think it's also coming from a standpoint of people not understanding how diverse photography has become in the last 1 or 2 decades, with all the smartphones and the GoPros and all these kind of other cameras that you can use for all kinds of different purposes. And they also, that these cameras are very specialized at what they are doing and what they are good for, and you can't really do with one camera what the other camera is doing. So they are not really interchangeable. For example, your smartphone can do a lot of things and can photograph in very conflicting, difficult light situations, get really great results that with a normal camera you would have a really hard time to photograph that, even if the camera is like 5,000 euros. It couldn't take the same picture. For example, my phone has a night mode where it makes a 3-second exposure for some reason, and afterward you have a super crisp picture because somehow it calculates together everything it has recorded in its 3 seconds, and it somehow turns out a picture where you see every hair and everything super sharp, and the light is okay and evened out. So that is really impressive. And these cameras we have today, the professional cameras, can't do that. I'm kind of wondering of either are they moving over to add these kind of functions, because a lot of people say, no, we don't need that because we do it afterwards in the studio. I talked about a guy from Sony, and he said that. He said no, because people, they want RAW, they want to edit on the computer, they need all this kind of professional software. The problem that he's forgetting is we are in a very short time loop today. I need a photo, and then 5 seconds later it has to be on Instagram because I need to be the first to post that photo in a super high quality. I don't have time to connect to a laptop and then edit it in software and then upload it. It's too slow. And so a smartphone is perfect for that. You get great quality, really good resolution, and boom, it's out there, and you're the first one, and you are the one who gets the most clicks or likes or whatever, because that is where photography, where the business is now. In the past, you had this very slow photography, and then you develop it and you send it to the publisher, and they talk about it in the conference, and then it comes out 2 weeks later on the front page, whatever. But now it's like 5 seconds later, it is on the front page. There is no delay, It's super, super changed from what photography has been to what it is now.
It's interesting that you talk about, because there's something I never considered, that you're saying there are different cameras specifically for different for different environments,
right?
And I'm sort of thinking, like, I'm sorry for those of you who I have not listened to me talk before. I say a lot when I was a student, a lot. Back in film days, you're quite right. You had a camera, and the camera had a set limit of abilities. And whatever you wanted to do with it, you needed to change your film stock. So, if you're photograph, you go, like, let's say obviously winter's coming up, and there's lots of like Christmas fairs and stuff like that. So if you wanted to go to a Christmas fair and take photographs, you probably want some fast film, some maybe T-Max So, TMAX 3200, something like that. So a really fast, grainy film, something like that. So you load your camera up and you would photograph with that. So you were restricted to the camera, the film stock that was in your camera, and so you kind so cameras themselves didn't change, but film did. Film changed quite a lot, because Kodak had, to use an example, they had like Tri-X and T-Max and all sorts of things like that, and they said, well, Tri-X is an old film stock, and then T-Max is like, rather than flat pyramidal grains and so they got very technical about film stocks in a way that most photographers kind of went, this makes no difference to me whatsoever. It doesn't really matter. But now we're in an environment where Canon, Sony, Nikon, whoever, Fuji comes out with the camera, they say you can do X, Y, and Z things.
Right.
You can be there, and this camera is capable of doing all these things that you want to do. And I think I appreciate there is a movement for technology, and people are moving forward. The camera manufacturers are moving forward, and that's good, because it gives us the opportunity to indulge in various options. But at the same time, it confuses so many photographers, especially photographers who have never experienced the restrictions of film life, that you need to work within certain parameters, that those parameters are fixed. And I think yesterday, and we can talk about this a little bit more if you want, we talked about music photography, about photographing
yes, and the concerts, right.
And all the music photography that we have in our minds was photographed. The people like Bowie and stuff in the 70s, and all the Sex Pistols and all that kind of music. All the photographs were photographed on kit and gear that is arguably so inferior to what we have today. And the film stocks were inferior to the ability for us to capture today.
I would really like to hear these old timers talk about how they did that, because today it seems almost impossible you can take shots like that. And even like on Friday, I was on a concert shooting people on a stage. There was another guy. He was a lot older than me. He said, I have an old DSLR camera, 12 years old. The maximum I can go is 1600 ISO, which for analog times is wonderland. But for digital times, it's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, it's super low for such a dark stage. And usually you would go between 2,000 and 6,000 from the ISO. And I was like, how do you even take pictures that are sharp? Because they are moving, they are rocking on the stage. How? And he showed me pictures, but you can see the individual hairs and everything. It's like really beautiful. I have no idea how he gets these exposure times. And maybe he's doing a lot of editing afterwards. I don't know, like super underexposing the picture, stuff like that. He probably has some tricks up his sleeve, but it's super impressive. And today you have to worry less about these things. And well, yeah, like you said, you don't really know these restrictions they had back in the day. I think often also in photography, it's maybe a little bit hard to see that how difficult it was, and also maybe how limited it was, because today, of course, you can do more things in a wider range because the camera allows for it.
Absolutely.
When you look at, for example, old movies, they give you a good idea on how restricted cameras have been. Because I was watching a movie with my mother, like all these kind of, was it like Lawrence something? I don't know. In something in India, and I was watching it, and I was thinking something is strange about that movie. Something doesn't feel right. And then I realized the camera is never ever moving. It's always static. It's standing there, and then the next shot is standing there, is standing. No moving camera, no nothing. because they just couldn't do it. It was impossible. They didn't have a crane. Probably the camera was super large and heavy. They couldn't like just move it around. And that was back in the day. And it wasn't dynamic like today, where you can just run behind a person, and even you have a camera you can strap to yourself and run around with that. And there you see it, very much the difference in photography, because it's static. You don't see it so much, how strong the difference is. But I think you see it more when you go to the edges of what photography can do. Like, for example, these people who do like their action sports and stuff like that, and take pictures there from their own perspective, stuff like that, where you just couldn't do it. And that was also is like an interesting history of how GoPro, for example, evolved, because he was a surfer, and he said, well, the only way you could do it in the past was to film from the beach. There was no other way. Maybe a boat, but the boat is rocky, so also not good. So you always had these distant shots, and they were just not in the zone, in the moment, just not interesting. And then he said, I need to have something where I can have the camera strapped to my board or to my wrist or to whatever, and you can be with me on the board. And that's interesting for video, but also interesting for photography, where you also couldn't really do that in that way. And so that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is a thing. And this is something that, it's hard for people, especially people of a certain age. There are, I said in the recent video that I put on my channel about digital, it said that my background with photography, I learned photography in a film world. When I first started taking photographs, film was it. That, the idea that you could talk to somebody through a phone, like a computer.
Right.
I had a Commodore 64. That was my first computer, So the idea that you could hold a computer in your hand, and obviously it's arguably that iPhones were stronger, and I can talk to anybody of my family through this thing across the world for free, right? Is science fiction. It is so beyond what it was. And yeah, so that was kind of my background in photography. And then when I was a student, Photoshop came in. It was like Photoshop 1 or 2 that I was introduced to, and there was no layers. And so my background with digital is that there's a foot in digital and there's a foot in film. So I'm
right.
And in South Africa, which is where I grew up, there is a phrase that they use for British people in South Africa called soap peel, which, if you are kind of, I think in Dutch, anybody who's Dutch might get it, is that you've got 1 foot in South Africa, you've got 1 foot in England, and the other bits are kind of hanging in the water. So soot is salt in Africa, and peel I'll leave to you. So that's kind of my background in photography, is that I have this kind of like weird juxtaposition that I got an idea about film, but also I'm comfortable with digital.
Right.
And so so I see kind of 2 sides to this. With digital, people, especially in kind of challenging lighting situations, so like a music concert would be challenging, that they would go, well, I can't do everything that I as a photographer want to do in this situation. So digital is great. I sort of look at it and go, well, I am photographing a situation that somebody else has made, and I need to be mindful of that setup. Right, the fact that I can see shadows and I can expose for shadows with my digital camera and bring them out is possibly thinking incorrectly, because if I go to a concert these days, the lighting designer has set up the lighting to be in a certain way. So as a photographer, if I override all of that, because I can with my digital cameras, am I kind of like not thinking about the feel, the vibe of the photograph? If we look at all the pictures that, you and I are of a similar age, and so let's say it's sort of 1970s, 1980s kind of music is the images that stick in our minds. those were all taken using a very limited set of film and set of gear. You know, from the gear point of view, there's not much has changed because they had fast lenses, they had, you know, the camera and the physical equipment has not changed. The sensitivity of the medium, the film, has changed. And I really wish that, well, maybe I don't actually. You know what? Now I'm about to say, I was about to say, I'm things are changing. It's great to see what people come up with, and I have my way of preferring to photograph, which is working to the confines of what I have and using spot metering and exposing for highlights to make images that have atmosphere. In my own sort of.
So that means you shoot in RAW and then you do a lot of editing afterwards to bring the shadows up again.
Quite frankly, I haven't photographed concerts per se for a while. So probably about 15 years or something. And when I did, what I would do is, you know, we talked about shutter speeds, you know, blurry stuff like that. Is that you shoot, one of the things that you did as a back in there, we had very tight restrictions, is you would shoot with shutter priority because you knew that you had, let's say, like if you're doing concerts, right? Yeah. So listen where I'm going with this, right?
Okay.
So you have, let's say you have a 200mm lens, right? Because you're in a pit and you're doing, I'm talking like stadium concerts, right? So you've got a 200mm lens or something like that. So you're photographing something. If you keep it at shutter priority, then you know no matter what happens, you will have a sharp image.
Oh, I see. Yes, for that situation.
Right.
Yes.
And then what happens is if it's a bit underexposed, if it's a bit kind of otherwise, at least it's sharp.
Right.
Because an underexposed sharp image you can get away with. A correctly exposed blurry camera shake image you can't do jack shit with.
Right.
So that's kind of where you need to, and this is where it's all kind of experience comes in.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So you go shutter priority. And then you just kind of go, and I would, it depends. I prefer to shoot raw, but if you were at a gig, photographing and then uploading straight away, which you would do at a stadium type show, because obviously that's a band that are stadium worthy, so that the images need to be uploaded quickly. You would shoot probably, you know, like a not as a JPEG, so it goes straight into whatever it is and then straight upload. And then I would probably say you fall back onto things like spot metering. So using spot metering at the back of the camera rather than average sort of stuff. Spot meter, take the picture, and it's done, because that way, especially with on a stage environment. Right. You can, if you meter for the person, you know, if they're lit from behind, the lights are, they're lit from behind, and you meter for their face, you're going to get a kind of, this is sort of okay. But then if you meter for the light with your spot metering, then you're getting a nice silhouette. You know, so that's kind of where it falls back into understanding about how the things work, about what you're photographing and stuff like that. And that's why I in my studio I don't use in-camera metering. I use a handheld meter. For a variety of reasons. But average scene metering, certainly in an environment like music photography, I think you're missing a trick, because you are not in control.
Right.
You can interpret a scene in so many different ways if you're using spot metering.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And once you understand how it works, and especially these days, because you can see the results straight away, you go, that looks awesome. And when you've only got 3 songs to do to do pictures, you need to be on the fly. You need to know what that picture's going to look like.
That's true. Yeah.
Because you can't spend half an hour thinking about
Right.
it. But these are the beauties that obviously as
Hmm.
photography has developed, how it has increased in its potential, that these are the things that have opened up photography to so many new people, have expanded its horizons.
Right. Yeah.
And yet people kind of fall back into wanting to take photographs that are, I won't say average in terms of like kind of they're averagely okay. I
Hmm.
mean, like,
Hmm.
we've got shadow detail, we've got highlight detail, we've got this. You
Hmm.
don't need to have all these things. You don't
Right.
need to have shadow detail all the time. Some of the
Hmm.
best photographs.
I was is this interesting
Yeah,
is I did a shooting today with a model and we had a lot of fun and then I for some reason my camera didn't like focus on some of the shots and she was completely blurry and we looked at it on the computer and we were like that looks really great and so I said okay let's make another like round and take some photos that are completely not in focus. The
yeah,
same thing, like from the same angle, stuff like that, but completely blurred and everything. And they look really interesting because it looks like she's kind of behind a like a milky wall or something like that,
yeah,
and it looks a little bit spooky, stuff like that. So this kind of having control over these parameters is, or of these settings, is important to get your own style into there, and like I said, to get the expression in there, and you need to kind of understand what they are doing and what kind of effect you get. Like I said, with the silhouette,
yeah,
when you expose for different lights and when you expose for the face, when of course you can't have a silhouette because the face is bright, right? By the way,
yeah, yeah,
there's a question from Monty, and he
yeah.
says, "Do you have tips on how to find your own style?" I think that's the biggest question in art is how to find your own style, and
Yeah, it
it
is.
is I would say
I,
even for professional artists who have done it a whole life, it's really hard to find a style. I think I talked with a painter yesterday. He's a friend of mine. He was talking about. I think he was talking about Matisse and Picasso. Have Matisse and Picasso lived in the same time? Maybe he was a different artist. And so
yeah,
they kind of. I think he said maybe it's not Matisse. I'm not sure about that, but let's go with Matisse for now. And he said he was really famous at his time and great, and everybody followed him, and he was so cool. And then Picasso came along with this completely different kind of painting, and suddenly Matisse was old school, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, but look at Picasso, he's a new cool kid. And so Matisse had to kind of rethink and redefine that, and he had kind of a artistic battle with each other to be the coolest next, you know. And so they evolved their style by rivaling their styles against each other. And I
yeah,
think this kind of turning wheel has become even faster now because of all the technology and all the online, where in the past you would take, especially as a private person, photos that you show to your neighbors. Now you show them to everybody, and you scroll down and there is the next picture from another photographer who might be better or worse than you. And so it's kind of a competition. Even if you say, no, I'm not in the competition, everybody kind of is. And this is why also psychologically we are so influenced by social media, because we subconsciously feel that thing where I say, oh, but this photo is still better than mine, so maybe next time I have to do better. So yeah, defining the style is a really hard thing, right? So
it is a hard, it is tricky, and I think one of those things that we should, and you talk about Matisse and Picasso, and is that a style is not a fixed thing. I think
mhm,
that's probably that is probably the main thing to understand about a style, is that it moves, it changes. Your photography style absolutely changes as you become a different photographer. The style that I photograph in now is different to the style I photographed from 10 years ago, which in turn is different to the style that I photographed in 10 years previous to that. And so it changes through time. As Picasso has a feel,
mhm,
but his style itself has changed. It's throughout his entire career, and absolutely, that you talk about people being in competition with each other, and there is a good argument making that people will compete with each other to push themselves forward, and that's evolution. And you see that in music. I certainly, I've always felt that the bands, and so like the late sort of 60s and 70s, like Zeppelin and the Who, and and all this other sort of bands, Pink Floyd, were all in competition with each other. That they were seeing what somebody else was doing, and that was driving them forward. It was making them try out new things and going directions that they hadn't previously considered. And photography is certainly in that realm, that we these days we look at people who are big YouTube stars, who are big sort of Instagram stars, what have you, and go, this is the photography that they are doing, and we should try and emulate that. And there's an argument about whether or not that's a good thing or something, but at least it pushes people forward. So I forget the person's name who asked the question about finding a style.
Monty.
So Monty, if you're looking to find your style, what I would say to you is, first of all, don't worry about what other people think. Photograph whatever comes from here. From whatever comes from, and I'm going to stand up a bit, whatever comes from here, right, in your gut, right? That is your photography. That's whatever it is. Don't worry about what other people think about it, right? What I think about it, what Olivio thinks about it, whatever the people in the camera club, whoever thinks about it, it does not matter. You should photograph how you feel you want to take a picture. We talked, me and Olivio talked yesterday about Germany, right? I find when I'm in Germany, it is the most visually inspiring country that I've been to. When I'm in the cities, especially, there is something about German cities that moves me in a way that I cannot describe. The country itself, there is something. I step off the plane and I feel inspired. I feel motivated. And that would be, one could say, my style, is that it is quite, I won't say it's hard or whatever, but something about my style feels connected with that. And if you are drawn to a certain thing, and that thing moves you, and it wants you to create something, and you feel comfortable photographing that thing, then that is your style. Don't care if it's a style that other people like. We're not doing this. We're not taking photographs to please other people. We are taking photographs to please ourselves, to have fun, to enjoy the things that we see. I go to Frankfurt and I photograph odd things, lamps in the top of coffee houses and stuff like that. And Olivia living in Vienna probably has seen his fill of coffee houses.
Yes.
Yeah. But those sort of things, they interest me. They resonate with me. They touch my soul, if I want to call it. And that is very different to how I thought of myself in my 20s.
Right.
Yeah. So don't go looking for style as a definitive thing. Photograph what you like. Yes. Photograph what connects with you. If something connects with you, photograph it. And if you see that whatever you photograph a lot of, the same themes keep cropping up. I like angular things. I like broken street scenes. I like broken concrete, that kind of thing. Then that's your style. Embrace it. You'll find it. If you go through all your photographs and you look at it and it's there. Right, tease out what's inside you. Tease it out. Don't think that your style would be found in piles of books and stuff, that you will finally glob onto something that is, oh, I get that. Photograph whatever comes inside. Photograph whatever feels naturally. whatever feels to you, man. And that's your style, which
Right. Yeah. I think
yeah,
that's a really good way to just figure it out by doing it and seeing what resonates with you and what agrees with you, right? So
yeah.
that's
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
right. I think that's a really important part of the process. And I would absolutely also suggest to try out all kinds of different things. Maybe things where you think, hey, they are really cool. And then you do them and you figure out, well, they're kind of boring. It's actually not what I want to do.
Yeah.
Even though they looked cool from the outside, maybe that's not exactly the thing. So just try out a lot of different things until you find something where you are happy and you enjoy doing it. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there. When you want to do something, you talk about other people and they see your passion. So many people want to help you achieve that. So don't be too shy about asking other people to give you an opportunity to, I don't know, be your model or photograph their, I don't know, house or whatever you want to do. Or maybe drive to another location, right? If you don't have a car, maybe find a friend and go with them to the mountains or something and photograph there. So that could be a good way.
There is, you mentioned obviously something about like passion, like people
Right.
recognizing your passion. It's one of the things I think, so many people will feel, certainly in the UK, and this may not be the same for other countries. I know in the UK people are somewhat reserved, is that we do not talk about passion. We do not talk about this is what I want to do. And it's very much a case of wanting to please other people and not rock the boat. And I kind of go, do you know what? It's I know it's a weird thing, but
the Germans don't have that problem.
But that's the whole thing. It's like people sit there and they go, I'm gonna take photographs, but I want other people to like it. I want people to say this is good. And I know that people it's hard. It is hard to fight against that thing because you're putting the photographs up. And you talked about earlier that when 20, 30 years ago, we would show photographs to a very small selection of people.
Right.
And now we are showing photographs, if you want to a potentially very large audience. And there is going to be a concern about what if these people sit there and go, you suck. Right?
Yes.
And I would say to anybody who's watching this is that people who think that your work sucks, people who will sit there and go, oh, I don't really like this is not for me, will not say anything. They will not sit there and go, Olivio, Alex, whatever, your work is awful, it's atrocious, and I hate it, and blah, blah, blah. They won't say that, right? They will just go, I don't really care for it, and they will move on. Just as much as we do with anything that we see, that you kind of go, if you go to an art gallery or a museum or anyway, you just look at it and you say, that doesn't really grab me, right? You move on. The people who sit there and go, your work sucks, Olivia, you're awful. Alex, you don't know what right? They are the people whose actually opinions don't matter, right?
Right.
Because they're just sitting there. They want to be heard. They want to hear their own voice. They want a reaction from you. So it's easy for you to just sit there and go, okay, whatever. I'm not interested. I'm sure, Olivia, you've probably had some people on your channel, and I get people from time to time on my channel who sit there and go, you suck, right?
Right.
And you just sit there and go, do you know what? Okay, if they just say, I don't like your work, you're awful, okay, that's their opinion, that's cool, because it's not made for them. They don't like it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this is the thing with your photography. Everybody who's watching this, take photographs for yourself. Don't worry about what other people think about it. Just do your own thing, man. Just just have fun taking pictures, because that's what you That's
Right.
why you picked up a camera,
I
is
mean,
because
I would suggest to maybe find some people that you trust and care for, and either they share the passion and want to do photography with you, so you maybe have a photography circle that you just enjoy looking at them, but that you ask them a little bit about that, you like it, and you get a positive feedback from that, because it is, I think for a lot of people, the problem is also that they not only finding their own voice, but allowing themselves to having these own voice and having a little bit of support from the outside, that people say, oh, wow, that is really cool, because often you don't see it yourself. You're too close to the work. It gives you that reassurance and gives you that kind of push up to say, oh, yes, I should do maybe more of that. And it's, for example, for me, it's really hard to like understand, is it a good photo or not? And often when other people say, hey, that's really awesome, it's like, really? It's just a photo, you know? For me, it's just like one of these many shots. But for them, because they are not so close, they haven't seen all the process behind that, that is, for them, it's impressive. And then, of course, for me, it's a lot more joy then, because I see that it's not for nothing. It's still, there's something, people are impressed. I can move people, I can interest people in something, and share something with them that's important to me. But for me, inside of me, it's just like it just sits there because it's part of me. But for the other people, it's like something that's more than that, right?
it is
So
a very hard thing,
this
isn't it?
support, I think, is kind of is also kind of important, to find some people who support you, right? Where you also trust them to actually tell you the truth and not just say, oh yeah, that's so nice, because they're your family or your friends and they can't say anything bad, but like people,
It's interesting
you
that
know.
this is the thing, yeah, because it is, you said about like your family, your friends, they can't say anything bad, what have you, and
Right.
I think you're on the right track, but maybe the wrong direction,
Uh-huh.
right? Is that your family and your friends will say something bad.
Right. Yes.
Your family or friends would say
Yeah.
that picture, yeah, I don't get it. Right? My wife
Right,
watched
right,
some of
right.
my videos on YouTube and stuff, and she goes, "It's not your best." She goes, it's not," which is basically her saying, "What are you thinking? That was a bad video, you know." But that's the whole point. Your family and your friends
Mhm.
aren't invested in making you feel good, right?
Yes.
Your close
Yes.
friends. They will say to you if something is bad.
Right,
Bad.
right. Yeah.
They will say to you if they don't get it, if they don't appreciate it, there's something that's not gelling with,
Right.
right? Um,
I mean, it's also important to understand that most of the time your family is not the audience you're aiming for. They are just people you are bound with by genetics, but actually they are not the people that you take the pictures for. So you need to find that
yeah.
audience and
But
like find people who really enjoy what you're doing. And it's, I think it's equally important to find these people, but then at the same time not to run after them, right? But just like you go in the same direction by chance, not to like try to impress them with the next shot and the next shot, and then
there
after a
is,
time
I
you only make photos to get the praise, right?
yeah,
So you have to
there,
take some risks and only like follow what you want to show, what you want to express through that.
there
So
is, I think, yeah, I agree with you to an extent that
okay,
there, yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
That's a start.
There is, yeah, I believe, firstly, yes, you should make photographs to please yourself. I think first
Right.
and foremost, you should
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, because ultimately, if you're not happy taking photographs, right, then you are not, then you just stop taking photographs. And you're happy taking photos because you're taking photographs that please yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not taking photographs, one of the reasons why I closed my studio fairly recently is not because of COVID and all that sort of stuff, is because I'd spent the last 4 or 5 years taking photographs that didn't please me, right?
Okay.
And I felt upset about what I was taking photographs about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So first of all, yeah, you need to shoot for yourself. You need to shoot so that you are happy, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
Then, number two, you have the people whose opinions you value. And I mean, like, you value, right? They say, Olivia, you, within your life, there are some people whose opinions you you properly value about your art. We're going to use the word art as a sort of thing. So they are the opinions that you will listen to, and that you will photograph to try and please, for want of a better word, because that's a very small group of people, and maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people, right? That you sit there, and I have 2 or 3 or 4 people who, when I take a photograph, I go, if they like it, if they like what I do, then that is a validation that what I'm doing is kind of cool. First of all, I photograph myself. Then, if those 4 people like what I do, that's extra validation. I go, that's pretty cool, right? And beyond that, okay, that's just bonus. That's gravy.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Okay. So I photograph for myself first. B, for that very small, very elite group of people who I have known for 20, 30 years, right? And beyond that, it's just like, okay, I don't really care, right? There will be people beyond that who like what I do, fair enough, it connects to them. But those are the people whose opinions I care about. If I did a body of work that I come in, I really like this, and that group of 4 people looked at it and went, Alex, that's horrible. I don't like it, whatever. Then I would reconsider possibly what I was doing, right? But those are the only 4 people whose opinions I care about.
Interesting.
That
is really interesting, because for me it's a little bit different. By the way, before I say that, Monty says streaming with a guest star was a really great idea, Olivio. So thank you very much, and thank you also, Alex, again for being on the stream. Really awesome, really interesting discussion. Sorry again.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you, Monty.
Okay.
It's lovely to be here. Yeah.
Right. So to respond to what you just said, I think it's also a little bit a part of how you are as a person but I think everybody has like different reasonings. And I thought what catch my attention was that you say, okay, you photograph first for yourself and then for others as a second level. And for me, the interesting thing is that I think I photograph for others first. And I'm not sure how much am I a part of the equation other than being the creator of the work, right? And that might seem very contradictory to what I said before, not photographing to please others and run after them to get likes or something. But that is not how that works. For me, the important thing is that I like to be on a stage. I like to perform in front of people, basically. And when I do it just to do it, I feels like... why am I doing it at that situation, right? Why am I doing it in the first place? I want people to look at it when I do something, and photography is a part of that. And I want to show them something. I want to like maybe change their perspective, give them new insights, inspire them, like open up their inner eye, their outer eye maybe also, you know. And that for me is a big part. And I feel like I wouldn't do these things if it was just for myself. And that I think is strange for a lot of people, because I talked also with other artists, and most of the artists do it because they want to do it from their inner like calling, so to speak. And I, of course, also have this kind of artistic calling from basically all of my life long. This is why I studied art and went all in that direction, that. But for me, it was always about the cultural process and being a moving lever, or being a moving wheel in that cultural process, and move something and do something in there. And that is the meaning for me of that I can create something that has an impact in that way. And I think, for example, this is also why I made this video lately in my Facebook group, where I say, hey, I want to bring more of my photography into the channel and share the thoughts and the philosophies behind that, and also build myself up more as a photographer, because for me, as a part of my life, it is important for me to be successful in that way that I can say, I'm a photographer. I can sustain myself with that. I can travel the world, take cool pictures, and I still can do that, and it works also financially, which also is an important part for me. Which is maybe also an important part of maybe not finding the style, but for recognition, is that for me, I have this concept, and also, again, a lot of people disagree with that, but for me, I say appreciation is also money, because people can always tell you, oh, I like your work, oh, it's so beautiful, and then you say, okay, buy my picture, and then say, oh, sorry, I have to go now, as you know, I have to walk my dog, I'm sorry, you know. And so suddenly they are not as interested anymore. So I think money is the hardest thing people will let go in their life. And when they like your stuff so much that they say, okay, I will let go of my hard-earned money that can buy me shelter and food and heating and joy, but I want your picture for that cash. That's a real appreciation. And this is why this is also a certain factor why I always try to factor in, where I say, I don't just want to be a photographer. I could photograph around the world and just make my tutorials like normal, but to be able to be an actual professional photographer and sell works and do that with financial recognition also, that is where it becomes real, you know, for me. So that's also kind of that part of creating your own story, basically, where you want to go, what you want to be.
I absolutely. I understand where you're coming from. Like the idea that if you sell something, it becomes tangible, becomes a realistic, it becomes a real thing, like a physical thing that you can hold. And one of the things is, it's like I have there's two things. When I discussed with my parents, who were very supportive of my career throughout my entire life, that I'm closing my studio. I'm like, I've had enough of photographing other people's kids. And my father was like, but you won't do photography anymore. I went, well, no, I will, because I will still take pictures for myself, and I will still share my love for photography with the 45,000 other people who subscribe to my channel, stuff like that. But he didn't get that. He didn't see it that way. He thought that as a photographer, as somebody, that my job was to take photographs of something that people would give me direct money for, and I kind of sit there and go, ultimately what I want people to do, what I want people to enjoy, is to see photography as something that they enjoy, whether or not it's my photographs, whether or not is the way that I see the world is irrespective. My channel is not talking to people who enjoy photography as a subjective, as a medium that they see, but a medium that they take that they enjoy, that they do themselves. And I would like people to sit there and go, do you know what, Alex, you talked about the things that make you inspired about photography, and they've inspired me to take pictures. I ultimately take pictures to try and please 4 people, which I think we've discussed. And that's really the end of it. That is, whoever likes it beyond those 4 people that's a bonus. I really don't mind. But if you sit and as a photographer, so if you want to please people, then find a very small group of people who you are intimately connected with, who you can absolutely touch and understand what moves them. All of the people who are watching this video will know a couple of people who understand their photography, who understand their art, and will give them honest feedback. And then when you do take the photograph that moves them, it will move them in a way that the other 1,000 people who see it on Instagram or whatever, who might just go, I quite like that, I'll give it a like, and then it's done, and it flits out of their environment. The people who have known you, and I know of those 4 people, at least 2 of them have known me 20 odd years. and they have known me as a struggling artist, for want of a better word. They look at my work and they go, I love that. And I go, do you know what? That's the recognition that I want. Because it's somebody whose opinion I value, who has known me long enough to not blow smoke up my ass, to use to use another, has gone, I like it. Now, I'm not creating everything to please them, but that is my goal, is kind of, if they like it, well, is to get some sort of reaction from them. And if I'm true to those people, and that follows through into my YouTube account and all sorts of stuff. If what I create resonates with them,
right,
then I have done my job as an artist. And I believe that all of us, if we dialed it back a bit, instead of trying to please a lot of people, that we focused on utterly pleasing a core small audience, then we would do a lot better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I think an important part also of that is to have a sensibility of understanding the finer parts, the facets of what photography can be. And I think a very good way for that is to look at really good photographers. Maybe also go to exhibitions, because often the stuff they see online as pictures or in books is not the same as when you see the actual photograph hanging on a wall and processed in a way as it should be. And you are there with the picture at that moment, and it just makes a very, very big difference. But also really encourage people to read the texts about that, where the works are analyzed. And that is it is really hard to see something with your mind rather than just with your eyes, and actually understand what is going on. And often the works don't make sense, and you don't see the finer parts of them, and you don't see the brilliance of the work when you don't have that access to that. Because a lot of that is becoming very diverse from the different areas that photography can go into, from the background of what art and photography can be. And there is such a huge difference from the stuff we see every day on Instagram and Facebook and all these kind of pages, as these flashy pictures that jump in you and want to get a click or a like or whatever, compared to actual sensible, very artistic works with a lot of thought and concept behind that. And I think you can compare it a little bit maybe to wine, because when you're not used to drink wine, and you never tasted a really good wine, then it's really hard to understand what is actually the difference. And also the interesting thing is, I talked about someone who's an expert on wine things, because I'm actually, to be honest, I'm more of a beer drinker. But what he says was really interesting. He said, a lot of people who don't have a palate for wine, who haven't evolved their palate to understand the different fragrances and stuff that's in there, they actually like cheaper wine better, because it's made to taste good to the public, to the broader public. And then the finer wines, they have a taste that is not as impressive. It feels a little bit flat, because you can't taste these smaller, finer fragrances, and you can't differentiate them in your mouth. And so all that kind of poetry of taste that's going on inside of that expensive wine, you just miss, because you don't know where to look for it, right? And you expect this other thing that is like overwhelming, fruity and sweet or bitter or whatever, to just impress you, because the bottle is like $3 instead of like $15 or $30 or whatever.
I wish I could find a €3 €3 bottles of wine do not exist in the UK.
Really? Oh, you get them here all the time. You get even €2 bottles, stuff like that.
No. But I absolutely, that is a very good point. And I love that analogy about the cheap wine. The cheap wine is boom, boom, boom in your face, right? There is no subtlety. It is sweet, or it is dry, or it is this or that. It is one or the other. It is, is definitive. And as you get more expensive in the wine, as it becomes more refined, the differences do become more subtle. or the palette, or the profile of the wine becomes a lot more subtle, as it does with beer as well. You know, I like Weiss beer. Weiss beer is my favorite kind of beer as a goal. And within Weiss beer, there's obviously lots of different profiles. You have very hoppy beer, you have very mild beers, you have also there, and you could taste the differences, right? But as somebody who is let's say, for example, argument is a teenager drinking alcohol, it's all the same, right? You know, what you want is the result, which is making you drunk.
Yes, right.
So you're not looking for the profiles and stuff. And photography, you are quite right, is like that. And Instagram and things like that follow into this idea of what Paul Hill, who is a famous lecturer in the UK, talked about lollipop photographs. So these are photographs that we look at and we go, oh, that's very nice, yada yada yada, and they're just, but they're gone. They're like a lollipop that you just suck and the flavor is on your tongue for a minute and then it's gone. Whereas if we look at the photography of great photographers, for want of a better word, that it requires thinking about. Right, so the photography is like Stephen Shaw, Gary Winogrand, and Robert Adams, yada yada. So these are photographs that don't smack you in the face. They don't leap out of the page and go, you must watch it. But they are photographs that you need to sit with, that you need to smell, that you need to do a little bit, you know, sort of that kind of sucking over the tongue sort of thing, to get the real flavor of the photograph. And that's why I feel certainly in the modern era, that top layer of photography, which is the Instagram people, of which there are a number of very nice photographs,
right,
is so seductive because it's full on. It bashes you in the face, but it takes effort to swim down and discover the stuff underneath. And not everybody will want to do that. And that's perfectly fine. You know, that I think is a thing. Those of us who are swimming around in that pool of more refined palette, if you want to do that, we'll sit there and go, but no, you should come down, it's awesome. And there are other people who sit at the top and go, I'm quite happy with my 2-year bottle of wine. Because it's what I want right now. It's you know, I'm all about getting drunk.
Right.
you know, I don't care about profiles. I don't care about the flavor. You know, it's like if you go to a routier in France, you know, the trucker stops, you know, the food stops. So if those who are not familiar, a routier is like a service station in France where truck drivers and stuff stop. And you can get like was it €20 or something, and you get like a nice bottle of wine, and you get some food and stuff, and the food can be quite nice. Right. But if you were a foodie, you would sit there and go, I wouldn't even be set dead in routier. You know, how dare you? I don't want to go to a routier. You know, it's ridiculous. And that's the thing with photography. Instagram is this routier of photography, where there's a huge amount of photography that's all about just bashing you in the face, going, you don't need to think about this photograph because it is just assaulting you with the things that right now are hip.
Right.
You know, very
and I think it's also like I see this a lot where people think, no, this is like if you ask them for these finer parts, this that you find in art, that they think, oh no, this is how do you say, like highbrow, high nose, you're like arrogant because you want to look into that. But that's not the thing. That's not what it's about. The important thing is to basically to push through from that pop lollipop photography to the other side of really understanding what is going on, and then being able to use this understanding to create your own style in your own photography, you have to go through that phase of understanding what is photography, what are the concepts behind it, where does it come from, and to understand also the artistic sensibility behind these works, behind the process that they have taken to create these pictures. Because that is basically that brings you in the setting, in the mode to actually be able to take pictures of a high quality yourself, because otherwise you're just like trying to simulate something without understanding the background of what is actually going on, and it might look good but you don't know why. And that's a very big difference between creating something by mimicking things that look good and creating things that are their own language and own expression that you have created and found here for yourself. And I think that is still an important process. Maybe not everybody needs it, but it is certainly very, very helpful if you have it,
It's interesting that you mentioned about quality, about the idea of like something needs to be somewhat highbrow to be a quality. And
it doesn't need to be highbrow. People see it as highbrow, but it is not highbrow. It's just like having a deep interest into why is it like that? Why does it feel so good, right?
See, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I felt for a long time, certainly when I was younger, that my work should be somehow important to have meaning, have depth, have gravitas, and what have you. And it's later, I think, certainly in my late 40s, I'm now 48, that I've changed my perception of what my photography is about, and it's less about in trying to impress other people. Now that may be an age thing, and I'm going to guess that if my audience is slightly, let's say an older, say 45 plus, so sort of similar sort of age range, and I've moved away from trying to impress other people with my photography, and more about doing things that make me happy, that make I kind of go, I quite like that and stuff. And a lot of people, I get a fair amount of comments on my channel saying, where can we see your photography? Where and the answer is actually nowhere. You can see some on my Facebook page, which is my personal Facebook page. But beyond that, I have a very, very limited number of pictures on Tumblr. And I don't really show my photography because ultimately I take photographs for me.
Right.
I don't really want to share them with anybody. I don't really want to, even beyond that core group of, or even within that core group of some people, that full group, they don't really actually see what I create. And my wife, who probably sees the majority of what I actually photograph, sees maybe a quarter of what I actually take pictures of.
Interesting. Okay.
So it is an odd thing because I do appreciate that I'm cutting off half of the whole process of taking photographs, which is the print and display. But I look at photographs and I take them and I look at the pictures on Bridge or what have you. And I sit and I go, I like the fact that I just saw something that nobody else saw.
Right.
Nobody else, and I have kept that moment for myself.
I understand what you mean. I have also a number of works. They are actually not, because I come from the concept art, so they are more about theory. And those are artistic works I have never shown anyone because they are so minimalistic and just like basically a small, very, very small moment. And the interesting part about that is the big concept behind that, what they ultimately mean when you think about that very, very small moment. But actually, I'm not sure people would understand that as a work. And so I didn't show that to anybody. And so, I really understand that if sometimes you have works that you can't share with people, you don't want to share with people. So that is also part of the process. Not everything is made to be out there. Some is part of your process where you create something because it's part of what you do as an artist, but not because it's part of something that you want to display, right? There's also this part of the work that is you as a private artist, and then there is these basically finished works that you can share with the public, right? But the rest of it is like inside of your own circle,
absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely.
And there's even a number of people, a number of artists who then destroy these works because they don't want anybody to see them, and because also maybe they don't want to mix it with that outside legacy, because what you show on the outside and what is on the inside is so different sometimes that it would take away from what they have created on the outside.
But I think that is the thing. One of the joys about us as photographers, and also anybody who works in a visual medium of art, is that we all see the world in a unique way. You know, the way that you photograph the world is completely different to the way I photograph the world, and Monty photographs the world, and all these other people who've engaged in it. Is that everyone who's watching this stream tonight photographs the world in a different way. Some of us want to share that with other people. And some of us go, do you know, I just want to photograph the world the way that I have seen it now, because it's a validation for me that I have seen something unique. Out of the 6 billion people on the planet, I am the one who saw this. I am the one who saw, like, I'm looking at my room right now, and I see that lamp light thing. And that's what we're looking to do, is that I am taking this thing. We talked about the 4 people. It sounds like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but it's not. There's 4 people who I like, whose opinion matters. And one of them sat in a car with me, and I took a photograph once, and they saw it later on. And they said to me, I was standing next to you. I was standing when you took this photograph, and I did not see this. Right. How did you do this? Right. And that's what that is for me, that's what I do. Is that I make a document of saying that I saw this particular thing in this time, whatever, and that's kind of how I see the world. Right. And it's not credit for you, it's not credit for anybody else. It's because I realize that I have a very short time on this planet, relatively speaking, and that there are many eyes who see many different things. And I want to remind myself that this is what I see right now. Right. It's not for other people to like. If other people like it, that's cool. That's fab. And if other people like the way that I talk about it, that's also fun. But it's for me. It is for me as I see the thing, and that has made me happy. And maybe like you talk about conceptual art, it's very tricky with conceptual art to explain it to other people. Yes. Because it's so personal, and that is the thing. That real personal photography, and it sounds like such a completely obvious thing to say, but personal photography comes from a personal point of view, and it's photographed for your own self. Right. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. I have 2 comments from the community. One is a little bit longer ago. It says Monty says,
you have to understand the technique. That was from the discussion we had before. But I would say I mean, understanding the technique is very important. But what is the technique on itself, to understand that is kind of easy. But the more complex part is to understand the reasoning behind the technique, and also where the technique is placed inside of that whole discourse of what art and photography is, right? Because it's always evolving, it's always going somewhere, because it's part of our everyday culture. And this is, by the way, I also said this in my Barcelona video, is this is an example from painting, by the way. When you look at Picasso and his works, they look very modern in what they are, and he changed very far away from what painting has been before. But if you have the chance to go to any kind of Picasso exhibition, look at the works, and especially the brushwork he's using, and you will see that the way he's painting is still very classic. He's painting a picture like you would expect it to be painted, like you would expect a brush to be used. So this is, you absolutely see that he has been grown up as a painter, coming from that background, and then staying inside of the realm of painting, but changing the way he like becoming more abstract in the things that he's painting. When you compare that to more modern painters, they are also removed from the classic access to the classic way you would paint, and use the brush completely different, and go away from this kind of brushwork, maybe even so you don't see the brush, or they use it in a more technical way or stuff like that. So they have removed themselves not just from being this, they have become more abstract, but also not as classic in the way they use the brush. So the technique is different, but also the reasoning, the purpose behind that is different. And that's also an important part when you analyze artists, to understand when did they take the picture, and why was it so important at that moment to take this kind of picture? How does it fit into history? What did it change? Because often you don't understand that connect if you don't see it from the perspective of their time. If you see it from the perspective of our time, of course, it means something completely different, because we already are used to that, right? So that's a very interesting part, to analyze it from that way.
That's I think that what you've mentioned about brushstrokes and technique and stuff like that is interesting, because obviously you know, painting as a medium is centuries. You know, it is an extremely old technique, and there are newer techniques. So in photography, we're kind of still finding our way. That there are somewhat limited, one of our techniques that we can employ compared to painting. We can't do mixed media, for example, or mixed media is a lot harder to do. And that is a thing. You have people sitting there, as also given that photography is a relatively new medium. You know, it's 150, 200.
Right. Yes.
It's almost 200 years old. You know, and so people say, oh, you can't do underpainting, you can't do this, you can't do that, or you can't all see all these things. And we're living in a world that is changing in regards to the medium. So it's much like painting was in sort of the Belle Epoque and sort of the turn of the 18th, 19th century, where photography actually was influencing the way that painting was created. You know, if you look at the Impressionists.
Yes.
You know, all of a sudden they were seeing not the frame as a definitive fixed thing, but going, oh, well, in photography, you can have things moving out of the frame. Oh my God, what a change. And Degas and you know, people like that change things. And certainly as modern day artists, I think we need to just not worry too much about technique that a lot of color clubs force upon people, and just do our own thing. You know, I think, you know, photography is an experimental, but that's the thing, photography is an experimental art form. Just
absolutely. Yeah. There's also, like, in art history, there are so many interesting parts, and I think a lot of the the way art has changed is a technical revolution rather than a revolution in the minds of the artists. And is, for example, when you look at that kind of where the modern art starts, and you have these painters before, they had a very, very different concept of what art is and what art can or is allowed to display. And you have, for example, a lot of these nature painters. And you think, oh, nice landscapes. You imagine them standing out there painting these mountains, being like in the vibe with the nature, and everything's so beautiful. But actually, no, they were completely kind of disgusted by nature itself because it's primitive and dirty and stinks, and you have wild animals. And what they painted was an idealized form, and they would paint it exclusively in the studio. They wouldn't go outside. They would maybe make some sketches outside to have a better reference. But they didn't paint a landscape as nature. They painted it as organized by like cultured nature, organized by a human, right?
And I think we see that a lot in the modern world. Is a sterilized perfectionist version. Whereas, so like the landscape photographers of, say, like the late 19th century, and painting all these landscapes that looked romantic, so they're all like the mountains and stuff, but they're quite soft, and and they have a romanticized sort of feel to them, and you know what it's like. You've seen the pictures of the Alps and stuff where everybody's like with lederhosen and the hat and the Alpenhorn and stuff like that, and it all looks very nice,
right?
And we see this in photography. Is that there is, especially since the advent of digital, there is a strive towards perfectionism, idealism, that a landscape that you photograph should be idealized.
That's interesting. Yes, that's interesting.
Let's take out the pylon. Let's take out the house. Let's take out the thing that detracts from the thing.
So it became a little bit back to that kind of humanly organized perfection, rather than showing the actual moment, right?
So rather than, if I think about, like I went to God Christ, when I was a kid, when I was in my early 20s, I went to Mont Saint-Michel in France.
Right.
And in those days, you could drive up to the Mont rather than having to take a bus and stuff. So we stopped about halfway along, and I took a photograph with my with my A1 and a tripod and stuff like that, with a graduated filter, and I was doing all sorts of stuff, and I was moving things around to try and make Mont Saint-Michel feel like it was a building in the middle of nowhere, right? And of course, in those days, because you could drive up and park, there was a big car park in front. Right. So I wanted to eliminate the car park. But of course, these days, I could just sit there and go, well, I'm going to change this. I'm going to move that, and I'll clone that out, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. And it's interesting that I was restricted by what I wanted to achieve as a physical photographer. And these days, that this is like leapt into, well, it's gone further, that people make landscapes that look unreal, that they look wrong, because when you look at them,
but that's this kind of age-old question that has been there maybe for thousands of years. I'm not sure if it probably was thousands of years ago, a little bit different than today from the conversation, but this concept of, should you be true to what is in front of your eyes, or should you be true to what is inside of your mind, right? This kind of realism versus idealism. Which of them is the actual thing? Like, for example, if you would paint a portrait of a woman, would you paint her how she is, or how you see her in your mind, right? And of course, in your mind, maybe she's more beautiful and you are in love with her. You want to show that softness and gentleness and beauty and, I don't know, youth and all these kind of things. But maybe in reality, it's not as awesome. But I mean that the artist at the same time is often not a documentarian who is there like a security camera to show the nature as it is. You want to improve it in a certain way to give it your own expression. But the question also, of course, then is how far can you remove it from that, right? How fake can it get, and is the fake real because you're honest to yourself rather than to nature? So these are really huge questions over the ages, right?
Oh, boy, I hope your viewers have got another 4 hours.
How long have we talked already? Let me see. It's already almost 2 hours. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
By the way, before you answer, we also have a comment from the community. Keep it in mind. I will get back to that. I just want to read that real quick. Gary says, question, is photography growing in terms of achieving followers rather than every other person trying to be part of the community? Is there a difference? It's a little bit difficult from the question. Do you understand what is going on? Because for me, it's a little bit like
Can you, Olivia? Can you read that back again?
Yeah, I read it again. Is photography growing in terms of achieving followers rather than every other person trying to be part of the community? Is there a difference? I think what he's trying to say is photography growing in the sense that we try, like there's people out there who try to get millions of followers and this is basically the peak of photography? Or is it the other way around that more people can join and everybody can be a photographer today?
Well, I
kind of understand it like that.
I tell you what, you have to think about that because I just need to go and check on my little boy because I can hear him.
Okay,
so
I
have a 3.5-year-old. I can hear him making some noises because it's bedtime.
Okay.
So I'm going to just check, and I'll be back in 2 shakes. And
yes, do that. I will have a monologue.
Yeah,
in the meantime.
and I will give some thought about to Gary's question while I'm just checking on if Ash is okay.
Okay, perfect. Good. See you in a bit. Okay, perfect. Let me switch over here to the main view like this. Okay, he's coming back in a second. I hope you enjoyed so far. I hope it's okay that we are talking a little bit longer than usually because I also want to do the review of the weekly challenge. We are absolutely going to still do that. But while we have the chance, I want to spend some more time with Alex and get these amazing insights and answers. So if you have more questions like that, please let me know. So it's really a very wide and interesting area of photography, right? And what was the other question? Like, I think I will wait for Alex to come back to answer Gary's question, so we can do that together. What were we talking about before? When you think maybe we talk about that style thing again, I think it very much also depends on what you want to achieve personally in photography, because it doesn't always have to be for the gallery or for the Instagram or for the family or whatever. It really depends on what do you enjoy as photography? What is the thing you personally want to do? Not everything is about fame or money or followers or any kind of thing like that. It's okay if you just take pictures of, I don't know, something that you like, right? And find your own happiness in that, because all of that is also photography, of course. Like, there is this kind of public thing, this kind of also the art community, that is another thing. They intertwine sometimes, but not always. And then, of course, there's a huge element of private photography that is more following your own reasons and interests and passions, stuff like that. And in that case, maybe you don't need to worry too much about what you're doing. You just do what you enjoy, because you're not responsible for anybody in the thing you're doing, right? You don't have to make anybody happy with that. Okay. There we are. Alex is back. Let me join over to... Wait, I can't see you yet. Where's the software? 1 second. There we go. Okay, perfect. So let's go back to Gary's question. Maybe Gary can rephrase it if he's still there, because I'm still a little bit puzzled what that is.
Well, I'm sorry. The perils of having a 3.5-year-old in the house.
Right.
When he calls, you have to go. It's not conducive logic. I think I get what sort of Gary maybe is sort of alluding to, is that that in the modern world, a lot of photography is based around likes. It's based around people, getting as many people who like your photography as is possible, and that we validate our own abilities based on how many people like our work, because we now have that ability to do so.
Right.
And
Right.
and what is the antithesis of that is, like, I don't care about likes. I care about whether or not those 4 people like my photography, and that's kind of what I that's how I base my growth upon. But a lot of people want to feel that they need to. If you get like 10 likes, then 100 likes must be better, and 1,000 likes must be even better, and 10,000 and so on and so forth. And
right.
That's kind of what modern artists, for want of a better word,
Right.
base their ability on. And I would say to Gary that if you are thinking about that sort of thing, that you're basing your ability based on how many people like your work or something, then you're kind of sort of missing the point, because it's not about it's not about how many people like your work. It's about whether you like it, whether or not it resonates with you, whether or not it has set up for whatever it is you want to do with it.
Right.
Your photography doesn't need to necessarily have purpose. It doesn't necessarily need to have a meaning. It doesn't necessarily need to have a grand vision. It needs to make you happy, ultimately. All the people, if you look at all of the people who have made art throughout the centuries, especially before the invention of the internet, they did it because they were driven to do it. Beethoven didn't write all his sonatas and his symphonies and all sorts of stuff because he wanted people to like him. He wrote those things. He wrote that music. He performed all those things because he wanted to just say it. You know, the Ninth Symphony is not made from watching a video that says, if you want to get likes, have a choir in your final piece.
Right.
Yeah. He went, I want to do this, and oh, by the way, I'm deaf as well. It's that sort of thing. These people, these great artists who we look at throughout all mediums, they didn't do it because they were looking for likes. They didn't do it looking for shares. They didn't do it because somebody else had told them this is how you get followers. They created these things because that's what their stomachs told them to make.
Yeah, they have like an inner calling, inner push to do something like that. Yeah. I would also say, like, the people, when you see like these have millions of followers online on Instagram, stuff like that, they are the peak of social media photography, but not of the quality of photography. And you can compare that to McDonald's or stuff like that. A lot of people like McDonald's, but it doesn't mean it's good food because they have millions of customers and they are the biggest restaurant on the planet. And I think often you will find that really good photographers don't really have that many people who follow them because, of course, they are addressing a certain niche and only some people like that. Of course, there's also photographers who are very famous and very good at the same time. That's a very big exception, I would say. So it really depends. But don't think that just because people have millions of followers means that they do some good stuff. There's a lot of them out there. They do such crap, but it's impressive. It's crap, but it's nice, you know.
It's absolutely the thing
like
is,
soft
yeah.
ice cream, you know.
Yeah. You know, look, I would be, you know, I put together a YouTube channel, and you know, I talk to an audience, and
Right.
obviously, the more people who watch my videos, you know, the better financially I am. It's trite, but that's kind of how it is. And my YouTube channel is a business, and whatever. So it is imperative for me, if from a business point of view, to get as many viewers as possible. So there are ways and means that I would need to do that to create an audience. And people like Peter McKinnon, for example, they understand the game, they understand this, you know, and that's what they do. If people say they are great photographers because they have lots of followers, then that's missing the point. No, they're not. They are good at doing. They're good at playing YouTube. They're good at playing that game. If you want to be a good photographer, for example, well, what defines a good photographer? What is the argument about that sort of thing? There are, as you have pointed out, many great photographers, many very worthy photography channels who have a fraction of the number of views. You know, Alex Soth, who is a very good photographer, who, you know, and his YouTube channel, while it gets a reasonable amount of views because he is Alex Soth, and people with him know, will never make it as a successful YouTube channel. But that's the point. He's not a successful YouTuber because they're two different things. He's a photographer, and he makes photographs that please himself. And I would say to everybody, and I know we keep coming back to this point, that every single person who watches your channel, who is about photography and all these sort of things, make photographs for yourself. Stop worrying about what other people think. It's not about whether or not somebody else likes your photographs. You take photographs because there is something within you. There is something within your gut, within your physicality, that says, I want to take the world as I see it and create something for myself. All the great art that resonates with me personally is made from a personal point of view.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of it. I cannot overemphasize this enough, is that these people who make these photographs, people who make the art, the people who make the writings and the books, and you know, it's like I don't listen about, you know, I read like people like George Orwell. They are written for themselves. They're not written by system to kind of impress other people. They're written. They're created to impress actually no one. The great photography, the great art that we all see, that we resonate, is not created to impress people. It is created to be an outpouring of the thing that's inside us.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. We also have the second part of the question is that every other person trying to be part of the community, like opening up photography, basically, is what I understand with that. I'm not sure if that is what he means, but for example, like we talked about that yesterday, I find that is a big part of how photography has changed is through, because we have all these devices and help us so much, is that everybody can take photos and take it in a really good quality. Like, for example, my phone understands what is in front of the camera and goes into the mode. If it sees a face, it goes into portrait mode. If I photograph food, it goes into food mode and takes a picture that has all the settings and all the adjustments that is good for food or for a face. So there's a lot of support there. And that means, of course, a lot of more people can take beautiful pictures in that sense, and it opens up. But what I find is an interesting part of that photography is I think a lot of reason why we have this and why we need this is because social media has become such a big part of our lives, and all these computers, like of course a smartphone is a computer that we have with us, is so much integrated in our lives that this has become part of our personality, our cultural habit, and also our language. So we express ourselves through photography, through these pictures, and because of that, they have to have like a certain element of following the visual language that is out there, mainly because they are not meant for the private personal circle, but they are meant for a public circle out there of thousands of people you don't even know from around the world who will see the picture, but they want to understand what is going on and want to see something beautiful. So this is a very different approach to that. But it's interesting to see photography in that way as part of, like, when you think about spoken language, it has become some more additions. First of all, we have stuff like lol, for example, or other things that we type. These are not abbreviations of word. They are actually different expressions of what you cannot say with words. Then we have smileys, also something you cannot say with words. And then we have photos and also GIFs, by the way. Also things you can't express with words, but they are expressing something that's part of you. And you're building yourself as a person in the world through that process, because a really big part of your personality is how you interact with other people and how they react back to you. And so this social media interaction is part of how we define ourselves, and that has become part of photography. And when you think about it in that way, you have such a very much removed way from the past where you take a photo and you take it, put it in the photo album, and then you look at it with your friends and family over cake and coffee, and everybody understands the inside jokes. Everybody knows who is in the pictures and understands the relations between them. You can't do that with social media because most people who see the pictures don't know you and your friends. So you have to basically be like a film director and choreograph the picture, and you have to become a hero in the picture. This is why it's so dynamic. People do crazy stuff. They jump into the lake and do all kinds of other things. Because you want to have a little bit of a show that you present and everybody understands, because the story has to be clear what is going on in that moment, even to people who don't know you. And that is very far removed from the start of what photography has been even 20 years ago, right? Which is not the start, but it's like from the analog time of photography. Right?
It's interesting you talk about, obviously you're trying to impress other people or the wider audience on social media,
impress, yes, but also make them understand, right?
Because that's a very different, obviously an extremely different world in which photography exists today. If you think when photography started, so like back in, so there was the daguerreotype and wet plate and those sort of days. It was a photograph of things that existed. So so let's say buildings and stuff, or a person. And that person was very much kind of like, obviously the nature of the thing was like, this is me, and I'm going to sit there and go and take the picture for 3 seconds, right? Because obviously there was a limitation about
right.
Something. And then we have things like the box brownie and faster mediums and stuff. So you get people like Latique, who's taking pictures of himself in the bath, as a child. And of course you couldn't do that because the medium has changed. So he is sort of sitting there going like, I don't care because I'm a child and I'm going to take pictures of what interests me, and of course now, at the time people would have gone, well, you're just a child. What do you know? You're an idiot. This is not how you take pictures. It's all wrong. And of course now we look at them in a different way. And now, of course, we see photography in a completely different way, and that's part of the thing. Is things changed.
Yeah.
That we see ourselves differently, and the way that you and I of a certain age see photography is very different to the way that a teenager or a 20-year-old sees photography. They see it in a because I remember when digital cameras became accessible, so 2003, around about there. But there are people who I know who are old enough and ugly enough to have a proper conversation with, who have never known anything but digital. They have lived in a world where the internet has just always existed. So the way that they interpret things is so different, so very different to us, and that includes imagery. Just as much as all the things that we were taught as visual artists, as visual people, about how the way that people have communicated visually has changed over the years. In the last 20, 25 years, 30 years, it has grown so quickly, so differently, in a way that we cannot. People of our age, we can sit and pontificate about it. We can talk about it. We can, discuss it stuff. But if we go out now and go into a city centre and grab 10, 20-year-olds and say, how do you feel about the way that you take photographs? How you communicate visually? They will give us answers that will blow our minds.
Right.
Because they're not hamstrung with the way that we as slightly older people keep communicating visually. For them, you talked about memes and GIFs and all those sort of things.
Right.
That is just how they communicate. We all talk visually, even though we're not aware of it. And yet we talk about it like it's something foreign.
It's like what? Foreign?
Yeah, because those of us who are of a certain age, let's say 40 plus,
right?
The idea of GIFs and talking with a picture. Yeah, I have a friend in America, and I talk to her quite a lot and stuff. And quite often, the conversation is pictures.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I go, here's a GIF, here's a GIF, here's a GIF, here's a GIF. Yeah. And we talk for about half an hour.
Right.
With photographs. Right. and that's kind of the thing, is that we have shifted within the generation, because I have known her for 25 years. And obviously in those 25 years, we could not initially talk like that. And now, without me or her sitting there and going, we are going to do our talk with pictures. It has become a part of our lexicon. And this is where we have an issue with photography and visual mediums, is that it has become a way of talking.
I have a very... Sorry, yeah. I just remembered something about that. Interesting part. Did you finish, or did you want to say something? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, absolutely. Carry on. Yeah.
It just came to my mind that an interesting part of the way we have photography as part of our daily lives is that even now, museums, but also artists who create these artworks for the museums, they feel a certain pressure, a certain requirement that the works they have and the way that is exhibited is Instagrammable. You have to have something that is worth taking a photo of, because then it's part of the public conversation. And if it's not, nobody's going to know about it, because nobody's going to talk about it. And of course, pictures are more visual than text. So you want to have something where people can stand in front of them and say, hey, I took a selfie in front of that cool work because look how awesome it is. And you see a lot of art has been very abstract, like maybe 20, 30 years ago. And now you see so many works that are very colorful and powerful and have a lot of this kind of flashy effects in them. And often you see art that is mainly complex in the way it's done rather in the concept that stands behind it, because it just looks good on screen, right? So it's really interesting how that has changed, also how we understand and display art, because all of that is also an evolving process, right?
Yeah. Do you not think, like, right, it's interesting because obviously a large proportion of that feeling from artists is making flashy, easily digestible stuff. Is that because it is Instagrammable, right? So, and I don't think it's a huge leap to say that art is a career, right?
Is it what?
Is a career? You know, people want to make money. Yeah, people want to make money from art.
Of course,
artists for the most part, they're not driven because they want to create art. They're driven because they like doing this, and ultimately, I want some money. Right? And we make money, obviously. The more people see our work and what we do, more people, the better off financially we become. So, if we have something that's Instagrammable, whatever, that is a knee-jerk reaction to becoming more well known. And Andy Warhol, you know, everybody can do 15 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
I mean, it's a question is, of course, money is part of that, but I would also see it like in that picture that because this has become part of the world, it is also flowing into art, that the discourse of what art is, this discussion about the art and art culture has also flown more inside of that visual medium in photography, and this now is our everyday culture, because before it was other things, and before you could even say it was more theoretical, more idea and philosophy based, because people would sit down and read these long articles in newspapers, stuff like that. Now it's not like that, so the conversation has changed. But when you look in other directions, it has also changed, and the way we do things has changed. For example, if you think about politics, and this has been in the very early stages of photography also, that politicians understood that, hey, I'm gonna be in a newspaper, so I have to look a certain way, I have to pose a certain way. It's becoming visual. Then after that, we had the first media broadcasted wars that have been photographed first, and then afterwards you had this, I think the Iraq war was the first one, which was broadcasted live through media, and that had a huge influence on how war is done, because it has to be presentable to the media, because suddenly someone is watching, right? And so in art, I think also has this kind of impact to say, now that everybody sees it and we are like in the open, maybe we have to change something. But also you can make the argument that art doesn't always have to be abstract and conflicting to look at, because we also have stuff like what is it called, romantic art, for example, or what is it called, Jugendstil is called, what is called Jugendstil in English is Art Nouveau. No, what is that?
I don't know. Say it slowly.
Jugendstil. Wait, let me check that real quick.
Youth steel? That's not. Why are you looking up? I think that's a fair. You know, it's an interesting comment that you make, because obviously, you know, photography is, as long as it has been around, has been used,
or Art Deco, stuff like that, for example. So we had a lot of art styles that have been beautiful, and they came after modern art, or the pre-Raphaelite art, stuff like that, that has been very like aesthetic. But after modern art, because it was the aesthetic was part of that. This kind of life-affirming positive element was also part of that. And maybe right now we are coming more into that kind of loop where people say, hey, we want to be happy. We had all this kind of maybe depressing art for the time, maybe because also the two wars that we had and stuff like that. And now we come back into stuff that is just like nice to look at. So it's really interesting to look at these different streams of what is going on in these discussions.
It's certainly a thing. If you look at like photography as a propaganda tool, as a broad sort of sense.
Right.
You know, obviously, back in the day, so if you the first people who took photography as a media kind of thing. You have people like Roger Fenton during the Crimea War and stuff like that, and even then, he was aware of how his photographs would not change public opinion, but he needed to shape public opinion with his pictures. So he would move cannonballs around. The very famous, the famous picture of
is that already cleared if he did move them around or not? Because they were thinking about
I would say I don't know enough but I'm going to hazard a guess that he probably did. He probably did, because why wouldn't he?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Why wouldn't he? The modern ideas that we have about, it needs to be factual, it needs to be this. They wouldn't. Those ideas were not in his head.
Right.
His idea was like, this is a picture of a bunch of cannibals. They're very interesting and I like, but the composition could be better.
Right.
Why wouldn't he move them? The idea that a modern sensibility that says you cannot touch the thing, you cannot change the thing. But the first person who's taking pictures of a battlefield,
right?
He's not thinking these things, right? And it's the same as Matthew Brady in the American Civil War and stuff like that. So all these guys are taking pictures and they're doing things, and then over the subsequent decades, ideas about how you take pictures of war change, and documentary photography change. So much so, then you get people like, by the time you get around to Vietnam, you got Larry Burroughs and David Douglas Duncan and Don McCullough, all these other guys who are photographing the real, the how it feels.
Right.
And now we're kind of in this weird position that on one hand, you get a bunch of people saying you need to photograph things as they appear, as they are true to life. And then you get other people who go, well, I have a digital camera and I can actually photograph whatever I want to. Whatever I see, whatever is in this thing, I can take it out. I can put it in. I can move it to the left. I can move it to the right. And we are now in a position where we have the guys, or the arguments that we were seeing in the turn of the century, the late 1800s, about pictorialism and pure photography. That on one hand, you have people going, you can only have what is in the scene. You can only do what I can photograph.
Right.
And then pictorialists going, but you can add this, you can add that, you can muck around with the chemicals and stuff like that. And we're having the same argument again. We're having the same discussions about photography. We don't need to worry about whether something is real or true or what have you.
Right.
Because ultimately that sort of thing, it doesn't really make a huge difference, but how we as photographers see ourselves.
Right.
Yes. What are we going to do? What are we going to be as image makers? Are we going to embrace the fact that we are going beyond the confines of that 35mm frame, the confines of the film, which I think we are. I think we need to just accept the fact we're going that way. Or are we going to just restrict ourselves to these very narrow confines of photography being a thing that is something that that was made 100 years ago?
Right.
Film technology, for one of very broadly speaking, hasn't really changed in 100 years. So we can either stick with that, or we can move forward. Just as much as
that's an interesting question, because I often think when I look at photography, Is it still in its infancy from what it has done and the stages it has gone through? Because if you look at other art forms, they have become incredibly abstract, but across the field, not just little like individual movements that do abstract photography and then the others just do like normal photography, just taking what is in front of the camera. And you have that in other art forms. I would say you would find that in painting and in music and in acting and stuff like that. But not so much in photography. A photo is still, in most cases, a photo. There is like some examples where you have very abstract photography throughout the time, from the beginning to now. There's very abstract photos, but most of it is a photo. And often also you can. I would say there is this argument that is it an artwork as a photo? So photo is the artwork, or is it an artist using photography as a medium? Which is a huge difference, because then still the artwork wouldn't be the photography wouldn't be the artwork. It would be made into an artwork, like you could do with other mediums. So that is still where I find that it's very interesting to look at photography and ask these questions on how far has it come along, what else can you do? Because I think we are very much still at a process where we didn't even touch the abilities of what photography can go and how far it can reach, and the meaning of photography in a philosophical and artistic, art theoretical perspective, right?
I think, you know, one of the huge things, certainly in my own perspective, that separates photography from, I was going to say art, but that's a very broad spectrum. Let's say painting,
right?
So scenic painting is the idea of hyperrealism, right? That the main thing is that if you look at a photograph, it has a realism about it. That obviously has a technical detail, it has a physicality that is very, very hard to replicate in painting form. There is, because so much so that obviously in painting there is hyperrealism, and very few artists.
But do you see that as a problematic element of photography, or as a quality?
I don't see it as a problematic thing. I just think there is a difference where people sort of say, well, with painting, the only limitation is your ability and your creative up here, because obviously you can paint whatever you come up with, and photography, like Photoshop, used to say the only limit is your imagination, right? Which is basically what a painter is. You know, painter can create whatever they see, so long as they have the artistic ability, or the technical ability rather, to create whatever it is they want. Whereas photographers need to think, and I think if photographers, and this is the argument that was like 100 years ago, if photography tries to emulate painting, if it tries to emulate traditional art, it will fail, just as much as we don't have pictorialist photographs dominating the scene today, right? Because
what pictorial photographs? What do you mean by that?
So pictorialism was trying to make photography look like paintings.
You mean, but like with the little dots?
Yeah, no, not
pointillism.
No, not pointillism. It was like, if you look at Edward Steichen, if you look at if you Google a picture called Moonrise, it was taking a photograph and then manipulating the image with chemistry, with actual physical paint, with all sorts of, to make it look like a photo, make it look like a painting.
Like a painting, okay, yes.
Okay. So it was lots of manipulation, right? It was trying to make a photograph look like a painting.
Interesting.
And that was kind of the thing, that if that was an approach that made sense, we would be taking pictorialist kind of photographs now. but it was a dead end because it was trying to copy something else.
I'm not sure. Maybe it was a dead end at that time. I wouldn't rule it out completely, but maybe at that time probably because it was like too early, maybe because now you have movies that try to be that look like paintings. Like you have this Van Gogh movie that looks like Van Gogh, as a movie. So it can be an interesting
but those
format.
stand out because they are single examples of somebody trying to, right? They are not embracing the medium for its possibilities, right? They're trying to make the medium like something else, right? That's gone before, right? Photography, so the medium of capturing light on a light sensitive thing, sensor, whatever you want to call it,
right,
is what makes it unique. Painters cannot do that. Right? They can. So this is the thing. It's like saying that, oh well, you know, recording audio on some sort of medium is the same as speaking, you know, as performing. So
right.
They're all very different things.
I see what I mean.
If you try to be, if you're as a photographer, you want to be like a painter, then you're trying to be like a painter. If you are a photographer who's embracing the medium of photography, and we saw this in photography in the late half of the 20th century, they are starting to stand on their own 2 feet. And now what we're seeing is digital images, people growing up with digital, who are going, I am going, not trying to be a photographer, as we would
understand it.
Understand it, yeah, quite right.
Yeah.
But they're now taking things in a different direction.
Right.
If you look at the video, I did some, you know, obviously I did a little experiment. I'm going to look at modern photographers. I Googled best modern photographers of 2020, 2021, and what have you. And the imagery that I found was interesting because it was nothing like I would have anticipated photography to look like.
Right.
It was stuff that I kind of go, I see where you're going. I see what inspirations you're drawing from. But this is not photography. This is digital imaging.
From your perspective, or what do you mean?
No, from my perspective. I sort of look at it and go, this is not what I would consider to be a photograph. But what I do see in it.
Do you have an example of that? Maybe I can put that on the screen.
Not on the screen, unfortunately.
But when you tell me, I can Google it, like a name or
something. I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know the names off the top of my head. But if you go Google like the best photographers of 2021, that the imagery that comes up is people who are quite comfortable.
Award-winning photography from National Sony World, that maybe Forbes?
You can do things like that. Yeah. What you'll see with those is that the photography that you see with all these awards and stuff is quite different to what we would anticipate as traditional photography. It uses things like drones. Right now, I would say
it uses what? Sorry.
Drones. Little flying,
I see. Okay.
Right. So I would say, like, traditionally, and I think we talked about this point yesterday, that I would say anything that you're not holding onto the camera.
I think you need to send me an example, a link on the chat, so I can open it.
If you go onto my channel, right. So it's the Photographic Eye. And you go and look at my recent video about digital versus, digital's the death of photography. You'll see that there are examples on that channel that talk about photography in a way that is so beyond what we think of photography.
Okay.
In terms of viewpoints, in terms
It's
of the way.
interesting. I want to
Yeah.
see that.
Right.
Which the newest video photography as we know it is dying. This one.
Yeah, that one, yeah. So
Okay,
it's
let me see.
in there, yeah. So in there are videos of people like use drones and stuff like that, and I sort of sit there, certainly as an older photographer, says he's 45, where I go, the way that people see the world, the way that modern people see the world is so different. It is so radically different. And yet, people can just do their own thing. And we should embrace it. We should let people see it.
Right. You would need to show me an example because there's so many pictures, old and new. It's kind of impossible to know which exactly you mean.
Yeah.
There's a photo of a guy in an orange suit. That's photographed from a drone.
Yeah.
That maybe.
See, all these things like this, when we photograph from drones and stuff like that, is
Right.
that a drone is so new.
Right.
The idea that the camera doesn't need to be attached to you, that you don't need to take, but you can send the camera wherever you want to send it, and take the photograph.
Right.
I couldn't do that.
But why is it but you think that's positive or is it negative? I'm not sure.
I think that's a positive thing. I think that
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It's because if you think about like Nadal, right? So Felix Nadal, he liked ballooning.
Right.
He was into balloons. Like hot air balloons as a big thing. And he had to make a fake balloon in his studio, right? In France, in the turn of the century, and which he stood in the basket and stuff like that. And he took the picture. He said, "Look, I am Felix Nadal in my balloon, right?
Right.
In his studio, right? But he had to make a balloon to be in the studio to pretend that he was in his balloon up above Paris. These days, he could be in his balloon above Paris,
right?
With a drone.
And photograph himself from there.
And then go, look, I am the star in my balloon. And I think that if we sit there and go, do you know what, all these technologies are against photography, then we may as well just go all the way back to the beginning.
Right.
And say the guy, the very first photograph that was taken, which was the courtyard where it took 12 hours and the sun, so the shadows are both on sides of the thing because the sun transversed the end of the day. Why don't we just go back? Why don't we just go back to that? And say,
we have a comment in the chat. It's super fitting for what you're saying right now. So this is from Decker, and he says digital photography has devalued the art of photography. The sheer abundance of photos taken by people and can be manipulated by software does not grab people's attention or interest as before. That really hits directly to what you said from the other direction, basically, because it's like, I don't know.
I appreciate
it's a very classic perspective on
it. It is the typical. So we said Decker. Hi, Decker.
Decker, yes.
Yeah. I appreciate where that comment is coming from. It absolutely. And it seems like today there is so much bad photography. There is so much nonsense around.
Right.
And we kind of go, oh, it wasn't like this back in the day. Back in the day, everybody was a proper photographer. Everybody took good photographs. And unfortunately, that of course wasn't the case.
Again?
It wasn't the case at all. There was a lot of bad photography.
Right. Yes.
It's just what happens was that there wasn't the medium to share it. As I've always felt, that's kind of the big thing. Is like
Yes.
Back in the day, and there's a book called Kodachrome Memories that if you get a chance, have a look at it. Is anonymous images from people just photographing on Kodachrome that cover all gambits of life. And a lot of those photographs are, what is it? They're just what they're what it is. They're nothing special, right? They're whatever. And people took these photos. They took bad photographs, but they didn't have a platform to share them. And that's kind of what's happening. Is nowadays they have a platform to share them. And they have a platform to go, oh, I quite like doing this thing. What do you think? And instead of having 10 people at their local camera club look at them, all of a sudden they can stick them on Instagram, they can stick them on Tumblr, they can stick them on places.
Right.
And it's natural that people want to have the adulation of lots of other nameless people. But I do think that we get a little bit het up about photography being too democratized in a way that kind of a little bit sort of misses the point.
Right. Yeah. I would also say, like, if you look also in other art forms, that the competition of more people being able to do things, of course, makes it more busy and more chaotic, but at the same time creates more competition, and through that, the evolution of the art form is very, very much enhanced. So a good example is when you look into music from the start of making samples and scratching on the DJ deck, stuff like that, and then the start of hip hop. And there isn't any other music form today that is more versatile than hip hop, with all the different things it can be, because they can do whatever they want, and they are not reliant on any kind of instrument or any kind of style, and they can just borrow from any kind of source they want. And this is a huge explosion. Of course, there's a lot of really bad hip hop, but this is the stuff you never see or never hear, because it's just out there on Bandcamp or Spotify, and nobody cares about that. But what is important about that, good art needs a process that has a lot of dirt, and that dirt is the soil in which the nice flowers can grow. So if there isn't enough dirt, you can't have beautiful flowers. And if you look back in history, I'm almost finished. 1 second. If you look back at history, where has the biggest flower, the most beautiful art and philosophy and science been? Is always at the places where the most people have interacted and most cultures have mixed. Like, for example, New York was a point, Paris was a point, London was a point, Athens was a point, Istanbul was a point, like that. Stuff like that. These big cities where cultures clash with each other and interact, and a lot of people do stuff, and everybody's creating, and out of that suddenly you create beautiful art.
Absolutely.
Photography is the same thing. Yes, we have photography, but because of that, there is so much evolution, so much competition, so much need also, like you said, for these new cameras that can go underwater, they can fly, that are super resistant, they can do all kinds of things. They can do pictures on 100,000 ISO, stuff like that, or take 60,000 pictures a second to get really, really slow motion capture, stuff like that, have evolved our understanding of what a picture is and how we look at the world. And also we have a new perspective on who can take a picture, first of all. And this is like at the beginning when they said, okay, now we don't need journalists to go out there because we have people sending in the pictures from their smartphone. First, people thought, hey, this is just because they want to save money. But think about it. Would you rather have a professional taking a picture from the perspective of the magazine, or someone who's actually from there experiencing that war and taking a picture from his perspective on what that war is? Because this is the actual realism, where you capture it from the eyes view of a victim or a soldier or whatever. So actually this has a very huge impact of what a photo is. It's not from a professional, maybe it's a bad picture, but it's a picture that's actually taken from one who is living that situation, not an outside viewer. So these things have very much evolved for the photography can be. So it has its place. Sorry, go on.
Absolutely. It's interesting. You obviously talk about it sort of like a perspective, the perspective of people living the situation.
Right.
And I think about that video that we talked about just earlier. You know, the death of photography. And I prefix that video. My intro is talking about the introduction of the Kodak #1. That radically shook up photography, because it was all of a sudden a camera that you could hold in your hand, that you could take wherever, and it changed the way that we perceived photography.
Right.
Not we, but photography was perceived. And I think my feeling is we are living through a similar shakeup that you talked about, you know, citizen photojournalism. Right. And there's a lot of pushback about that. I think fairly, you know, and I would agree with a lot of pushback, is that citizen photojournalism is sloppy, for one of them.
Right.
But it's sloppy at the moment. Just as much as citizen photography was sloppy in the 1888 period up to like kind of 1920. There was a because they're finding their feet. The people, you know, the cream of the people need to rise.
Right.
The way that people see things, like Latique wasn't celebrated as some sort of child genius in 1920. It was only in kind of like 1950, 1960, 1970 that people went, oh, by the way, actually, you're quite good. Right? And so we are living in this period right now where the Latigues of today are in the wings. They are waiting there. They are somewhere else. The citizen journalists who are going to shape the way that citizen journalism takes place.
Right. Yes.
Are just now making themselves felt, because they are kids. They are people who have grown up in it. You know, the first so Canon's was it 200D, something like that, was released in 2003. So that's less than 20 years ago, right? So we are talking about in longer terms in photography, a very short period where the people who are going to embrace the technology, who are going to embrace the way that we see or that photography sees the world, are only now finding their feet.
Yes,
just as much as if you look at like music videos. From the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah. Like when you look at also at the medium of YouTube, like before everybody was in tune that you say, oh, you can only have like state television, and then you have like these private TV channels and they can do stuff, but still you have to be on that station and they have to be a big organization, so you're validated to do something. And to like, who would listen to someone reading their own news in their bedroom on what has happened in the world today, right? You would think that's absolutely ridiculous that someone does that. And why would you need that if you have a news show on the TV? But now you have YouTube, and now these people are validated as their own creators and have sometimes millions of followers where they show their perspective. And this has grown up from we watch TV to why would I wait for TV? I watch YouTube now, right? And I know also that I have changed. Like in the past, for example, I would look into magazines. What is a good lens? What is a good camera? What is a good software? Now I go on YouTube because I know I have some people there that I trust, and they tell me the good and the bad and all these kind of things. I want to listen to them because they are in my shoes. They are the users and not the reporters, right? So very different, but still very much purpose, right?
Yeah, it is, and that is, I see it's a fair point. If you look at how quickly people embraced that change,
Right.
That,
Yes.
and we have all sat there. I'm sure all of us have sat there and watched some sort of very niche interest on YouTube. We all like various things, and gone, do you remember when we were kids? This kind of content would never be made. Right. It would never
Yes.
have ever been, you know, if I, you know, I watch a channel called Defunctland, which is about, you know, you know, it's, oh, Ferris rides, you know, roller coasters and stuff like that.
Ah,
You know.
right. Yes.
And it's so very niche. So niche, I forget what it's about. You know, and yet, because those were never made, and it's the same with photography, with the way that we express ourselves visually, is that we are, in terms of that regard, I feel in this period of, and those of us who are of a certain age, kind of like sort of late 40s and older, will go, the music videos that we watched as kids in the kind of late 70s, 80s and stuff, that were bad. That, you know, they were like, and they were full of weird effects, and they were full of like oddness, right? Because that's what technology could do. So in the same period now, if you look at like TV shows and the way TV shows were lit, in that period, so 70s and 80s and 90s to an extent, their lighting and the way that were filmed, it was so different to now. Now they look like cinema. They look like they're cinematic. Even a sitcom, which when we were kids would have been lit with like lots of banks of light, just very flat, looks cinematic. And photography and visual imagery is going through this change. It is going through this finding its feet. And those of us who grew up with it being one way are struggling so much with how it feels.
Absolutely,
because,
yes.
Yeah, because we are slightly too old to kind of feel a natural progression. And
yes. This is a thing that I often hear people say that, for example, they say, oh, now there is like all these pages like Unsplash and Pixabay and stuff like that. There is no market anymore for photography because you get everything for free and everybody can take a nice photo, and you don't need maybe a wedding photographer because your expensive smartphone can do it quite as good with the editing, and you can share it right away, stuff like that. But I wouldn't say that's true. The thing is, the wheel is turning and the market is changing, and you have to keep on your toes and figure out what is the market now, where is it now, right? And I have, for example, found that a lot of the part as today is interesting in photography is interesting in connecting to your audience is storytelling and finding the need of your niche. That you present something that only you can show from your perspective. And when you look at, for example, YouTube has also evolved in that way. Like at the beginning, you had these really terrible, goofy videos filmed on a very bad camera, and now you have stuff that is like on Hollywood quality, and they tell amazing stories with music and everything, because also that industry is now there where you can you pay like $10 a month and you get like the most amazing music and stuff like that if you want to. And that is also part of photography. Like now you have much more audience than before, and you can build a niche much easier than before. So the actual market is bigger and more accessible than ever, but you have to figure out how to serve that community and how to get them interested in what you do. And that is not as easy as before when you say, okay, I get booked with that kind of agency and they just sell my stuff. And they give me a call and say, hey, go there and photograph that soccer game, and then we give you $5,000 or whatever. I don't know how that worked, but you know what I mean? Like it was easy, and now it's a little bit harder, you know?
Yeah, who's that agency? I want that agency. I absolutely, no, I appreciate where you're coming from. And I'm going to, there's two things before I talk about it. So number one is I closed my studio this year. Mostly because of two reasons. One, I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. Right, it didn't fulfill me. And B, my lease came up. Right, so the lease on the studio was thing. So I decided not to, just because I was not happy with it. It caused me a lot of mental issues. However, right, so having said all that, the last 3 years that I was running my studio, I was doing about 70,000 a year, so 70,000 pounds. Okay, and that's just me. That I was the only person in the studio, and this is not. Yeah, so people sort of about, oh, there's no photography. Now I appreciate this is family portraiture, right? This has nothing to do with more commercial style things. And 70,000 out of the people who I knew running studios was at the low end of things. I know personally a couple of people who are doing a few million a year. Yeah.
Wow.
Not just them. There's kind of 20 people working in the studio, that kind of thing. So they're proper businesses. So the idea that photography is becoming, nobody wants to spend any money on photography. I think that yes, there's an argument for some of that, but as an argument of saying that photography is dying because of digital and everyone else, then no.
Yes.
My experience is that if you are willing to market it properly, if you are willing to understand why people want to take a photograph or have a photograph taken, then there is money to be made. Now, again, I'm going to say, in case I missed it, this is the family portrait industry, not photojournalism, not not agency sort of stuff. So it's a very different kettle of fish. So there's money to be made, and the idea with making money from photography is that it's always been about not what you can do, not what gear you have, not any of this sort of stuff. It is about what does the person want, and certainly from a family portrait point of view, I'm obviously a photographer, and I take pictures of my child. So my little boy is 4.5 years old, and I take lots of pictures of him. But my wife said to me last year, I think it was, so about this time, or just the middle of summer last year, she said, can you get your friend Paul, who's also a professional photographer, to take some pictures of us? Because my wife wants pictures of us as a family together. Right? And that's the key thing, is to understand why somebody is wanting pictures. Yes, we can all take pictures with our phone. Yes, we can all do these sort of things. But as it was always with us with film, there's going to be a person missing from the picture. And that's the person who presses the button on the camera. And
right,
you can talk about like 2-second timer or 10-second timer and stuff like that. But ultimately, the person who's missing from all these pictures is the mother, because the mother is the one who's taking the picture. And she wants a picture of her family. She wants a picture of her with her husband and stuff in a natural setting and stuff like that. And I know we're drifting slightly off topic with that, right?
That's okay.
But photography it's just changing.
Absolutely, yes.
But ultimately, if you want to be a photographer who makes money, if you want to be a photographer who gets paid to take photographs, it's understanding the change, this changing landscape, and not complaining about the gear, not complaining about the technology or whatever, being the reason why you don't have any work. The reason why you don't have work or whatever is because you're not networking, because you're not making it work for you. The old photographers, the guys back in the day, they didn't have any of the resources that we have today.
Right.
And granted, there were thousands and thousands of people whose names we don't remember. But all of these guys, they first and foremost worked on their photography, and they worked about networking with people. read a Walker Evans biography, read a biography about Irving Penn. They didn't just sit there and kind of sit there and go, boo hoo, nobody wants to take my nobody wants to take they got off their asses and they hustled, to use a modern phrase, and made bloody well sure that the people who were buying photography at the time knew who they were.
Right.
And that's
Absolutely.
it's always been us. But anyway.
By the way, we are almost hitting 3 hours. We had a
I
really
know.
long time.
I was looking at this. It's like 5 to 10 years. Like, so it must be like 11 o'clock. And
Yeah. I couldn't cut myself loose because it was just such an interesting conversation. So also thank you for everybody who's still in the stream, and we still have to do
wow! If you've been since the beginning, well, good.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we should maybe end it here because I also have to do the review of the challenge of the week still.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's still going. It's a really long stream, but it was really amazing. It was such a very interesting conversation and interesting insights into the concepts behind that and the perspectives on what photography is and where it goes. Really, really awesome. Thank you very much for being a part of that live stream.
It's my pleasure, Olivia. I must say I love doing these. My wife is less so happy because she's like said there. She goes, "Oh, I'm not going to see you tonight." It's like, oh, but it's nice. It is lovely to talk about photography.
Absolutely,
with people and with your audience, because it is we live in such a dynamic environment where things are changing, and we need to both look at the past, understand where we come from as photographers, but also embrace the future. Because the future is going to be a wonderful place.
Right.
I absolutely we live in a time of change.
Right.
So awesome.
Yeah, and I think today with the conversation, we've also shown that even though there's like millions of photographers out there, if you're really interested and you embrace your art, you can still find your niche and find your voice and create things that make you happy, and maybe find an audience if you want to. You don't have to, but I'm pretty sure you can, because there is interests out there for everything,
Oh, so, absolutely. If you think in the 1920s, 1930s, when photographers were becoming modern photographers, we understand it, there were photographers like Eugene Auger, who were like old school, like proper, like walking around with a big dog, 8 by 10.
Right,
yeah. They were still existing, and Walker Evans, the two of them overlapped. Right?
Interesting.
So you have modern and you have old, and neither of them, I think, neither of them sat and went, "You are wrong and you are wrong," whatever. They just went, "You're awesome. You're awesome. This is awesome. We're all awesome." Ultimately, this is what we do. We all take photographs. We see the world uniquely, and how we interpret that world is
absolutely
is as many photographers as there are in the world.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you don't like digital photography, there's a good point of saying, hey, everybody has these amazing digital photography tools. Now I'm going old school because of that, and I'm going back to the wet plate and do it really classic, and then you have a niche that most people are not touching, and you can create something unique and still be true to yourself if you like that stuff, or analog film or whatever. Like a good friend of mine, she's still filming with analog photography because she likes it, and she says the slow process is helping her figure out what she wants to do, because she has to be more careful about it. So you can still do that. Nobody says you have to be digital.
Absolutely. Right. We have as many as we if you go back to like art as a wider painting, there are many techniques in art. Oil, acrylics, watercolor, blah 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 blah. Nobody sits and goes, "Oh well, oils versus acrylics, or oils versus watercolor, the ultimate challenge, which one is right?" they are all just techniques
Yes,
that
right,
people
right.
use, pointillism, impressionism, hyperrealism, sort of thing.
And it's also interesting to see that even though we have photo cameras and computer graphics and all the kind of thing, paintings are still the form of art that sells the best because people like to have that
But
most.
that's a discussion for another day.
Absolutely, yes, yes, yes.
But it's a thing. I mean, I think ultimately with all of us, we should just take pictures because we like it, man. And
Absolutely, yeah.
however we take it, however we do it, it's fun. But anyway, Olivia, it's been awesome to talk to you, man.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for being a guest on my live stream, and talk to you soon, right?
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks. I'm going to say thank you to everybody and cheers for sticking with us. And Olivia, have a wonderful weekend. And so, what are you going to
Thank
do
you.
now? You're going to talk to some of your subscribers and.
Yes, because I do a challenge. I used to do it every week. Now I do it every 2 weeks. This month, first time I try to do it out, so it's a little bit less busy. Where I give them a task, mostly about editing photos, mostly about doing these photo collages like composites, and then I review them in my live stream to say, okay, what would I have done differently from the composition, from the colors, some advice there from the perspective, all these kind of things, just to give them feedback. So usually my live stream is that 1 hour or 2 hours I do a composite on my own, show the people how I work, and then afterwards I do the review of their work. So that's the process.
Cool.
Right.
Lovely. All right. Okay. Well, have fun. I'm gonna let you guys get on. And
absolutely also check out the channel of Alex. I will link it in the live stream chat here. It's called The Photographic Eye. Absolutely amazing videos about the concepts of photography, and you have always really good topics. You're really a master of finding interesting. Like I'm envious on how good your titles are. Like with the last live stream, I think the title was "Why Do We Photograph" or stuff like that. I was like, oh crap, that's a good title. Why didn't I think about that?
It's like, why am I doing this? I don't know.
Right, that's really cool.
There we go. Anyway, Olivia and everybody else, thank you ever so much. I'm gonna let you guys get on, so I'm gonna jump off the stream and have a wonderful weekend for the rest of you guys. And I'll chat to you soon, Olivia.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
bye.
Right. Bye.
All right, so we are going on with our live stream here. Sorry, 1 second. I have to close the Zoom window real quick. So I hope that was interesting. Thank you for everybody who is sticking around for hours. I just couldn't stop. It was such an interesting conversation. Sorry that, I also wanted it, right? Because it's kind of a amazing chance to talk with Alex about about his channel and about his videos. So that's really, really cool. Yeah, and his thoughts, right? So that's pretty cool. Let me organize here the stuff, and also where's the chat? I have to find that. So I hope you like that. Okay, perfect. There we go. Okay, let's have a look at the weekly challenge. I guess a lot of people are seeing that tomorrow because it's already very late, and it's a weekday. I understand that. Sorry for. All right, let's go on here. Let me switch over here to this view so you can see what's going on. And then I will also put the chat somewhere. I can see it. I lost it again. There it is. Okay, cool. Who is still here? Who is still with me in the live stream? I see like there's a handful of people, 17 people right now. All right, let's get this started so everybody can also go to bed at some point. That's one of the long streams. So the challenge was to put a big object into a photograph, like playing with perspective, like for example, a baby sitting 50 meters tall in a street, stuff like that. But you could do whatever you want to do. Russell is almost sleeping. I hope not. We have to do this still. Stay around, stay awake, drink another coffee. This is important. So here we have the first one. Very dynamic, really cool. This is from Robert, a baby, balancing on that, what is the thing called here? The, I don't know what the English word for that is. But I really like that. Also with the hand, like it's this hand turns the camera into a subjective view. So that's very nice. So you see through the eyes of the observer. You added a lot of stuff. I think also the people down here have been added by Robert. So that's very nice. The baby is hitting the head a little bit on the edge of the picture. So maybe from the composition, bring everything a little bit down. So there's a little bit space above, because that's a bit strange when it's hitting there. Otherwise, it's really cool. Like the ambient light of the different elements, especially the hand here, could be a little bit better. And I would have brightened this a little bit more so you see more detail in that card here. Cable car, yes, cable car. Thank you very much, Russell. So yeah, that's really a really cool edit. Thank you very much for that. Why did you blend out the watch here? Is that for branding reasons, copyright, something? I don't know. That's interesting. It's just a green patch here, but very nice. I think the perspective works here, so that's really cool. Let's go to the next one from Bart. Let's open this up and these in other windows so we see what's going on. So here we have that bird. Why not give it a try just for the fun? So here we have the bird. There's the shadow back there. Oh, there's also a little bit of a shadow on the head, so this actually worked out really well. Let's look at the original picture. See, there's no shadow here, and then we have the individual bird here. I think a little bit of the problem here is that it's really hard to tell how close that bird is to the camera, even with the shadow. I'm not sure. I kind of feel like the shadow is in the right position, but the bird kind of feels like too close to the camera for some reason. It's kind of hard to say what you would change to make the bird look more like he is. I mean, one thing that stands out is that the bird is sharp and then the guy on the bicycle is blurred. So this is also why the bird feels a lot closer to the camera than the bicycle rider behind there. Is this also, or this is also blurred? So it would have been good to also blur the bird in the same way that the bicycle rider is blurred, because the sharpness brings it closer to us, right? By the way, you forgot to change the inside of the wheels here from the color changes. Everything has this kind of cinematic look, and then the inside here is still bright. So you overlooked a little bit of that part. Yeah, other than that, it's pretty cool. It's really hard to tell what to do different. For a flying object, that is very difficult to get that right, so it looks good from the perspective. You could maybe make it easier by, for example, having elements of this cross. Like, for example, if a wing would be a little bit behind that rider, you would see that they are in the same space and the bird is just much, much bigger than the bicycle rider. You do have the shadow here, but it's kind of hard to make the connection, and I think also again because of the sharpness and the blur here, it's hard to make the connection that this is the shadow of the bird that's actually falling onto the head. But interesting still, really cool. Okay, let's go on to the next one. What do we have here? This is from Ellen. All right, there we go. Oh, wow. Okay. So you see, when you connect something to the ground, that's a lot easier to get a good feel for the perspective. Here we have the cat. There we have a tiny guy standing there. This is interesting. Does that work? It's surprisingly, well, not really, but kind of does work. There we have some fish here and some other elements. Where is this used? Where did you use this here? I don't see that. And this here, I don't see that either. Is it somewhere? Because I can't see it in the photo. Maybe you didn't use it, but we have the fish here, which is an interesting element to give some more structure and also give the cat some reason to be in the lake. Then the guy here, that works surprisingly well. You can see that he's leaning forwards. So he's basically standing at an angle, leaning towards the camera because the perspective doesn't fit 100%, but still it looks kind of realistic, I would say. So not too bad. By the way, can you hear me? Yes, you can. Okay, cool. But the way the cat is integrated in the picture is very nice. I like that. Also that you have here a little bit of the watercolor on that paw of the cat, so you see that's underwater. So yeah, really nice. Very cool. Also the ambient light, very good work. Thank you very much, Ellen. Really, really nice work here. Let's go to the next one from Jurek. Let's have a look what we have here. First pictures. So we have a girl sitting on a cliff, and then we have a village on a cliff. How is the result? Oh, wow. That turned out really nicely. So she's sitting there on that kind of balcony, or not really balcony, but kind of platform. Interesting that you found that spot in the picture, and the perspective is fitting together very well. Again, you have a little bit of the problem that she is blurry and then the background is sharp. So that is a little bit of a factor here. Maybe because you scaled that image up, or maybe that image wasn't really sharp, I'm not sure. But you can see that this is a little bit more blurry than the background. And that is a little bit irritating. But otherwise, from the ambient light, it's nice. I feel like the trouser looks a little bit too violet for me. It's a little bit too colorful in that case. Maybe that should be a little bit more blue, a little bit more cold, especially you have this kind of cool night light, and she has a rather warm touch on her. In the background, you can see that the ambient light is cool in most of the parts. It still looks a little bit like a sunny day, especially here in that area. But it's still okay. It's a pretty good attempt for that. So that's really cool. And the perspective fits really well. So that is nice. Also, how the foot is standing here on the side of the cliff is very much matching that. So really cool. Really enjoy that. Very nice effect. And I find these pictures are always a lot of fun to look at. There we have another one from Chris. Let's have a look. So we have here a guy with a child and feeding fish. Then we have a seal and a water drop. Okay, and what we get is this. All right. What is happening here? Let me see. Where's the water drop? I can't see them anymore. Let me go back here. Okay, so he's kind of floating over the water, but that's actually part of the picture. He's standing here on the ground very close to the water. The seal is kind of looking like he's flying through the air. I can see here very faintly that this is the surface of the water. So you made a line here, which is nice, and then you put the rest under the water. But from the way it's done, maybe make this fainter here from this kind of silhouette, and also a gradient on that, because the deeper it goes underwater, the less you see from it, right? So that probably would help. And also this seal is sticking very much in the corner here. So maybe it would be better if he would be a little bit more, had a little bit more room where you can see him. So yeah, it looks a little bit like he's floating. The perspective, the good thing about the perspective, oh, now I see the water drop. This is not here, and then we have the waves here. And this actually helps a lot with the understanding the size of that seal because of these waves, and the waves are overlapping with the person. So that's actually a very, very good idea to do that, and it fits from the perspective. But still, these elements are too, they look like shadows that are on top of the water rather than elements of the body that are under the surface, right? How is it in the original picture? Oh, it is like this here because everything is underwater. I see. Okay. Yeah, I would make that fainter here. And then again, like I said, with a gradient, so the further it gets away from the body, make it more faint because it's deeper underwater. And I think that would help a lot. for that image. But still cool, very good idea, really interesting composition. Let's go for this one is a cool one, I think. I've seen that before. I think it has a little bit too much going on. Oh, now I know why there is too much going on. All right, because this is an artwork. Okay. Because I was really impressed how this was integrated, but this is actually a picture where everything is already together. This is from a famous artist. I can't remember the name right now. She or he, is it a he or a she? I'm not sure. Makes these super realistic sculptures, but in very big size. I'm pretty surprised you can go so close to them and kind of touch them. But anyways, we have this element here, and then we have this. And I feel like this would already have been enough without these people here in the front. Of course, here the dimensions between the small element and the large element is already there. Is there someone saying something in the chat? No. Okay. When we look at the like this part here and the background, again you can see there's a huge difference in the blur of the sand, and then these people are in focus, but the sand is not in focus on their feet. So that's again a problem. You need to look out for where the focus points are so you can overlap them or make it blurry accordingly. And another thing that stands out is that this is too saturated and has a little bit too much contrast compared to the background here, where you can see that the sand is not as saturated as these elements here, where this couple here is sitting on the beach. So that also makes a bit of a difference. And these two guys here in the front, that's a nice idea, but it makes the picture a little bit too busy, and they don't really fill a purpose. Again, by the way, you have this adjustment of everything, but not here in the middle for these elements. You see here and here, this is not part of the mask you have created, and that has a different color because of that. So also look out for the mask that you actually catch all the details. The ambient light on them fits better to the background. This is too, like I said, too saturated, a little bit too high contrast. So that's really interesting. Okay, cool. Let's go on to the next one that we have here. Ooh, let's look at the pictures first and then look at this. This is from Mateus. So this is the snake, and there we have I think this is called the Iron Flat building, right? In New York. Okay, one of my favorite buildings in New York. I should know the name, but I'm not sure. Anyways, this is the result. Wow. That turned out really well. Very nice spotting that this fits together so well. Really enjoy that. The perspective is a little bit strange because you can see that the snake is going a little bit in a different way. Let me figure out. I think the snake perspective is leaning a little bit forward, and then the building is like this, which of course you can argue that the snake is wrapping around the building diagonally, which you can also see here on the side. It's actually doing that. So yeah, it fits actually. Something is a little bit off. Oh, I know. I mean, this is like cherry picking right now, but the snake is going around a round object here, and these are flat edges, right? So maybe to make it a little bit more realistic, try to push it in with liquify very, very slowly and carefully, and see if you can line it up with the building to actually touch the surface here better. But otherwise, really cool. I also like how the colors are coming together, the desaturated colors in the snake, and then also in the background, and a little bit of this kind of sepia look that we also find a little bit on the snake. That's pretty cool. That's very nice. I really enjoy that. That turned out really well. Really, really cool. Very, very nice. Thank you very much, Mateus. Pretty cool work. There's a lot of great artists here. Here we have the next one. This is from Jens, And there we have the little chipmunk. No, that's not the word. Squirrel. There we have the squirrel and the Empire State Building. I think that is, again, one of my favorite buildings. Which is the one that has these eagle heads sticking out? Is that the Empire State Building with the eagles on the edges, the eagle heads that stick out? Because that's I really love this detail with the eagles. Okay, anyways, this is the result. Wow, okay, from Jens. And I really like how you combined here not just the picture elements, because the perspective fits together very well, but also how you played with these more cinematic colors and with this contrast of orange and blue. So you really removed most or changed most of the colors in the picture to give this part its own identity, and then these elements a different identity in the picture. And because of that, it becomes very artistic, right? It has a lot more expression than rather being just, okay, this is happening right now. This is more like this kind of movie poster style. Really cool. When you look at that, like you see, this looks real, and that's all nice. But here it looks like more than reality, like an event that is happening, like something that is special and has purpose. And this is like really also why we have this kind of cinematic color grading, right? This has a purpose that enhances and how do you say, what's the right word? Elevates the content of the picture to something that is higher than that, right? That is what you want to create often in art and in movies and stuff like that. So pretty cool. Very, very nice. Here's the next one. This is a floating one by Mick. Let's see if that works. So here we have the original. I've used that fish at least 2 times, I think, in my live stream. That fish is getting really famous. Okay, and there we have, I would say, Hong Kong street scene. Not sure if that's that, but I guess this is from Mick. This is the result. Oh, wow. That worked pretty well. Very nice. Also with the adjustment of the colors. Again, changing it into 2 colors. We have green and orange here. There's a lot of high contrast down here for some reason. It looks like a little bit like an edge finding filter or something like that, or a little bit like this down here for some reason looks more like a drawing. So I'm not sure why you made this very sharp contrast down here, very high detailed contrast, but still it's a nice style. And from the color and how the light flows here, I feel like this fish is fitting in that scene really well. Very nice. I wonder if maybe when you blurred the tail here a little bit more, because it's more distant from the camera, that you would even get a bigger understanding of the dimensions of what is going on. But maybe not, because the background is not blurred. So probably, maybe if you blur the background a little bit and that tail, that could fit together. You can try that. But it looks great as it is. Really cool creation, and also very nice composition. I like the dynamic, how the fish is following the car and flowing towards the viewer, and also fitting in that kind of, at that moment, kind of feeling small, cramped space for that big fish, but that makes it also why that fish feels so large. So that's really, really cool. All right, really good works this time. Really nice. So maybe we should do it every 2 weeks instead of every week, so people have a little bit more time to work on that. That might be a good idea. So here we have some bats and then a dinosaur and some, I don't know, Northern Lights. There it is, from Joanne. Let's see. This is the, oh, that is very different than I would have expected. Interesting, interesting. Okay, so we are at a lake. We have a nice reflection there. Pretty cool. And there we have the bats over here on the side. So what I like is that we have the light here on that dinosaur, and so we are drawn towards that. That's pretty cool. I would maybe have put the bats closer to to the dinosaur. So in a sense that the dinosaur is hunting them, maybe making them even smaller. So you have this kind of feeling of dimension on a really huge dinosaur is hunting these small bats, right? But other than that, pretty cool. I also like the combinations, and also the readability with the silhouette here is very nice. It's very dark from the picture, but you can still understand what is going on in that night scene. Really interesting. It's kind of interesting also that you made that northern light less intense. I think it fits, because if it would be too colorful and too lollipop-like, it would be too happy for that situation, maybe. So yeah, pretty cool. Very, very nice. Thank you very much, Joanne. Very cool composition. What do we have here? This is going into, oh, there's another one from Joanne. And it's actually just one work, but let's look at it just for the fun of it. So here we have the elements. You have a little bit of a grunge overlay. We have a bird on a power line or a phone line, whatever that is, and a cat with a neckband. You should never put a neckband on a cat because they can really hurt themselves. Anyways, there we go. So here, oh, this is snow. Is this one of my overlays, or is it from somewhere else? I don't think it's from me, because I didn't make these very large flakes. Or maybe you combined it in that way. That could be. But it still looks pretty cool. Very nice. So this is going the other direction, where the cat is really small. Or maybe it's a giant bird. I think it's a rather small cat because of the size of the power line. That also works rather well. I would maybe adjust the colors a little bit more to give it a bit more of a nice feeling. And the cat, you can see, is less saturated and has less contrast on it. And that is why it feels a little bit like a sticker rather than the cat being there. And also you can see that the bird has a pretty hefty light from the top and then some dark shadows down here. So you might want to paint that onto the cat with dodge and burn a little bit more shadow down here, a little bit brighter maybe up here, so you get a similar light situation. They feel more like they are there. And maybe in the area where the cat is, paint a little bit shadow, at least where the feet are, so they look like they're actually touching the cable to make that more realistic. All right, let's go on to the next one. This is from Oliver. Good. Let me know if you're still in the stream and what you think. There we go. So we have, what do we have here? Landscape, an energy drink can that just says energy. That has to be the most bland brand ever. Energy. There we go. What else did you expect? There we go. and some kind of rusty grunge photo here. Let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah. We can see the dimensions from the grass. So it actually looks like a huge can. I like how the grunge, the rust is there on the can. So that's pretty cool. Actually, it works pretty well. Maybe I feel like if there would be something in the foreground, maybe a cow or a sheep that's standing there in the grass, small before that can, you would even feel that more. Or maybe having someone here, like a kid standing here, like very small in that part here, that could maybe make the dimension more intense, even more intense than it is right now. But still, it's pretty cool. I like also how you put the shadow here from the sun that's coming from the back, a prolonged shadow. It's probably for how deep the sun is, the shadow is a little bit too short, but never mind, because you still want to see the beautiful grass here to give you an understanding of the dimension. So that's okay. Doesn't always have to be super correct in how that works. Very nice. Really like that. Really cool combination. Thank you very much, Oliver. Oh, here we have some superhero stuff from Niels. Spider-Man is, or no, this is a mix of Spider-Man and Captain America. By the way, I'm right now, they have a, if you ever wanted to watch Disney Plus, they have an offer right now where you get it for $1.99. This is not an advertisement, just telling you, because I never bought that. I didn't want to, but now I'm testing it and I'm watching all the Marvel movies in series. This month I will just finish them all because I've missed so many of them. That's why right now I have more connection to. By the way, Spider-Man is from a different background. Spider-Man is DC, right? And Captain America is Marvel. So could they be on overlaps? I don't know. Is Spider-Man part? No, I'm not sure. Is Spider-Man Marvel or DC? But I'm pretty sure that Spider-Man is part of the Avengers. Yes, he is, because he has this kind of, he got his suit from Tony Stark, at least in the movies. So yes, there is an overlap. Interesting. I totally missed that. I think he wasn't part of any of the movies I watched. I watched like Age of Ultron yesterday, and before that Civil War and stuff like that. So really interesting. Anyways, there we go. So these are the pictures. And then this is what we have from Niels. Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. So we have a huge, gigantic Spider-Man inside of a park kneeling there. Yeah. It's pretty good. The perspective mixes. Really nice also that he is in there in the scene. So that's pretty cool. Something is a little bit strange. I'm not quite sure what. I think if you would adjust the colors of the background a little bit more, because they just look like a snapshot, and then you have this very like artistically created Spider-Man image, and this is a little bit in conflict with each other, that one is so sophisticated and the other one is so like snapshotty as a picture quality, that there's a little bit of a conflict. Or maybe you see you have like this a little bit like blue tint here in the background, stuff like that. Maybe also give him a little bit of these like normal unrefined colors onto the Spider-Man, so he looks a little bit like he is more in this kind of unedited snapshot, because that is a little bit in conflict, these two elements. But otherwise, really cool. Very, very nice. Really enjoy that. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Niels. Really nice. Let's go. Ooh, so we have here a nice dog from Laura. There is a cute dog. Okay, cool. I always like these. What's the name of this? It's a setter, right? Are they called setter? No, it's not a setter. What are they called? With the long ears and the I really like them. They look like a handbag from the side, like these old doctor leather handbags. What are they called? I can't remember. Anyways, this is the result. Wow. Okay. So we have people running away from a dog, running with a dog. I'm not quite sure. It's pretty cool. I think the perspective works. I think a bit of a problem might be that the ambient light is a bit different. On the dog, it's like it's also warm in the other picture, but somehow maybe the dog is not warm enough. You have to play around a little bit with the adjustment, because you can see how nice and white all of these clouds are, and then his fur here has this kind of is it blue or is it yellow? I'm not quite sure, but it's not as white as these elements back here and as these shirts here. So this is a little bit different from that. And I wonder if it would also enhance the perspective if you would have something in front of the dog. Like, he's not big enough to have a cloud in front of him, But maybe as you could try it as a playful element if you would like here maybe have a little bit of a cloud or something. Is that maybe that's too big? Then he would like be truly a giant. And here I think he's gigantic, but maybe that's the size of a house and not like the size of the sky, right? So interesting. But still very cool, very nice. And also when you have something that is more in the distant, when you look at mountain pictures, for example, like if he would be really huge, you would have that he's more desaturated and he is a little bit, often you have, for example, a blue tint in there from the distance because of all the elements, all the dust and air and stuff that is in between. You have a little bit of a color change in there. You can often see that with mountain pictures, for example. All right. Pretty cool. Very nice, Laura. Thank you very much. Let's go on to the next one. This is from Eric. So we have here, this is here in Vienna, the good old Belvedere. Very cool. Nice shot in the evening. Very nice. I've taken a similar shot and then I edited a lot. I put it on, I think I put it on Unsplash. Let me see. And this is with Viveza. I want to do more videos about Viveza. I think from the vote, we've seen that a lot of people have Nick collections. So this is at the similar time of day. And I would even say at a similar kind of sky. And then through Viveza, you can make this into this wow moment. That is really intense. Yeah, interesting. Really cool. Very interesting. So this is that. And then we have a duck also there on the same. This is this kind of water basin in front of the Belvedere, and then here we have the duck standing there. So I would say the perspective works. The light is kind of strange because this, like, you would have to make a mask here, brush a little bit over these elements and then reduce here the orange, like the saturation of that orange, because that is really like standing out a lot. Also make this maybe a little bit darker. Right now it looks like it was photographed with a flash from the front, but we only see the flash on the duck and not in the foreground. So this is a little bit conflicting. Otherwise, it could be interesting to have this kind of flash effect on that duck. And maybe I would have put the duck maybe a little bit more behind, so it is on that pathway here, and then you can have a shadow below the duck, because even if you would create a shadow here, the grass is already so dark that you kind of can't see it. So a little bit like not a strong shadow, because first of all it's overcast, secondly it's night, but a little bit darker, right? A little bit like where you have a kind of an idea that a lot of that path is darker because of the duck, maybe a little bit of moonlight shadow or thing like that. And again, like desaturate these spots, make the stuff here a little bit darker so it fits more into the atmosphere you find in the rest of the image, right? Also, maybe reduce the contrast a little bit. All right, let's go on here. Pretty cool, very nice. This is from Aricit. There we go. Oh, no, this is not from Aricit. This is from him. There we go. So these are the original pictures. Oh, there's already a girl sitting in the street playing. Oh, is this the final picture? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, so we have the final picture and the source images. So we have a car. Again, a really cool, like, building on that kind of street corner. The girl and the toy. A little bit much going on again. Kind of understand why the car is there. Maybe the teddy doesn't have to be there. So let's look at the picture here. The perspective is not completely lining up. So you can see that the perspective of the house compared to these blocks in the foreground, now the house is looking like it is leaning back into the picture because the perspective is going... when you look at these lines, you can see how they come down here and how they come down here. And then you look at the lines from the block and they are going straight. They are not bending down in any form. And so this is why the perspective, you perceive that differently. And because these are going down, you have now, when you combine these two perspectives, the perception that this has to be an object that is rotated, and this is why it feels like it's leaning back, right? So that is not completely fitting together here. The girl fits a little bit better, but also is a little bit in the wrong perspective. So you would have to have a photo that is more photographed straight on without that kind of strong perspective here to make that work a little bit better. But if you imagine that this building here with the strong perspective is not there, the girl looks like she's sitting there on the ground. Has a little bit of shadow down there. Also, these toys are nice. Maybe there should be more of the shadow. I can understand why the car is here, so you get a little bit of a perspective comparison. But on the other hand, if you already have these buildings and you already have these lines here on the street, you already know that there is that she is very large and this is a large tower. I think even that this teddy bear, even though it is a nice detail, is a little bit distracting from seeing more details that give you a relation to how big that girl is in the scene. If you want to integrate the teddy bear, maybe have him somewhere integrated, for example, leaning against a bus or leaning against the side of a house or stuff like that. So the element makes sense, because here it's just like sitting on the... Why do I still have these things in my ears? 1 second. Did I talk very loud because I didn't hear myself? I'm sorry for that. So now it's better. There we go. Okay, but otherwise really cool. Very, very nice. Okay, there we go. Let's close this. There's 2 more. Okay, cool. So this one is from Russell. Didn't Russell already do something? No, that was Niels, right? Okay, let's have a look at this. So we have some bare feet here and a nice street scene. I think I have already used this also in my live stream. So these pictures are all getting very famous here. Pretty cool, but they're very good pictures. What else can you say about that? It's really a good shot and a very nice color editing. And this is the result from Russell. Wow, that looks really awesome. That could be a movie poster. Very nicely integrated with the colors. I like how the legs up here are more blue because they are a lot more distant from the street lights. And then when they get down here, they are warm as the street lights are. So that is really cool. I think you also you put a filter on there, so you see all these details. Looks a little bit more more clarity maybe on there, so everything has more structure, but because of that it fits better together with the feet. So that's really cool. Isn't there a movie like that with a giant woman in a city? Wasn't that kind of a... I can kind of remember there's a movie like that. This could be the poster for that. I also love the dramatic sky that is really enhanced here compared to this shot. You can see here it's very soft, but here it's more dramatic, which fits from that intensity and drama because it's more like this kind of superhero giant kind of situation. So that's very cool. Thank you very much, Russell. Really awesome. Okay, let's go to the last one already by Jurek. Oh, okay, there is no source picture. So let's see. Oh, no, this is from Peter. Sorry. He has done this. The toy forklift. Okay. On a forest path. It is very good for this being a toy lift because it looks like there's actually the car standing there. So I was confused on how is this bigger than it would be. It looks like a really big car, but it looks like it's there. So that's pretty good. The shadow is a little bit strange on the ground because it's very big and it's very even, just like a dark brush stroke rather than following the structures as they touch or are a little bit distant from the ground. So look at where the points are touching, there is more shadow, and where they're a little bit elevated, there is a softer shadow and less intense shadow, of course. It's not like just one line with all the same value. And another thing I think here, like it works very well as it is, but I would say the problem is from the perspective you have, it is really hard to see that this is a forklift. Because when I look at that without the text, I would have no idea what kind of what kind of vehicle that might be. So different perspective from the side or from a 1/3 view, like a little bit like this, like this, would give you a better understanding of what is going on here. Interesting. Okay, cool. That was it for today for all the entries. Really cool works this time. Thank you very much for that. Let me see how I can switch over to the talk view here. There we go. Wow, so I really hope you enjoyed the live stream today. That was very long, but I think it was very nice at the same time. I really enjoyed talking to Alex. I had a great time. We had really cool conversations, and I hope it was also interesting for you to basically have a look into our minds, of his mind and my mind, and talk about that. And also thank you for all the entries in the chat. Sorry that I responded to them so late. I didn't want to interrupt Alex talking about his ideas on art. On photography, also art, of course. So I saw them, but then I was like, okay, I want to let him finish talk about that, and then we just dragged on the conversation. It took a little bit time till we responded to that, but I kind of think we responded to all of them. So yeah, that was really cool. Okay, that's it basically for today. Thank you very much for everybody who is still here after almost 4 hours. That was super long, but from my perspective, it was also super interesting. So thank you very much for that amazing stream. If I may say so myself, again, most of that amazingness comes from Alex being the guest today, and of course you being the audience and asking interesting questions in the chat. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye.